before. So we're right. And I actually have my iPad up to watch. So,
I went ahead and I started everything. So we're
so
live streaming right now.
Yay. Okay, perfect. Cindy and Cammie. Okay. So,
am I promoting?
And actually, what I'm noticing is that you didn't promote her, you just unmuted her. So
that's what I was going to ask. Okay, so to panelist.
Yep.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah. Perfect.
All right. There you go, Sophia.
Should I rename you guys again?
No.
Just kidding.
Oh, wait, oh my God, embarrassing.
Okay, now again, I am going to hit the record button on my ribbon at the bottom.
Sure.
Right before we.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so Claudia's here.
This is stressful.
Oh, you're doing great, Cindy. So we're going to wait for Marcy to get here. Hi, Claudia.
Hi,
and
Priya.
then we'll
how you
start.
doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yay. It's super warm here today. I don't know if it's warm where you are.
Lovely. Yes. About time.
I know, right?
Yes, beautiful.
And so, Claudia, just so you know that Cindy's going to be helping more with the meetings. So, this is actually what Cindy excels at. I just try and go get myself going by, but she's really going to be taking the lead. So you are in the best hands.
Oh, that's awesome. And I see that Marcy just joined us. So
I know.
We're all here.
Yay.
Oh my gosh.
Are you excited, Cindy?
Am I not muted?
You're not muted. Is everything okay?
Oh my gosh,
What? Do you want to start? Well, let's say hi to Marcy first. Hi, Marcy.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Have a busy day, but so far so good.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Super excited to have you here. Cindy's actually going to start the interpretation channel. So Cindy, are you ready to try this?
You bet. Okay.
Okay. So click on the globe. And then there should be like name place where there's like all those like asterisks. So go ahead and type in Marcy's name. And then when you're done, go ahead and type in Claudia's name.
Marcy. Claudia.
And then
hit start?
Hit start.
Well, that was so difficult.
I know. And look, now it says English and Spanish interpretation available. So that is you've done it. And I want you to notice where their panelist names are, where it says ES. So that means that you've started the interpretation. So you are good to go.
Testing my audio.
We can hear you, Aaron.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Priya, can you hear me?
I can. Yes, Mandy, I can hear you.
I just figured I better double check this time.
No, and do you have your information if you need to call in? Do you have that available, or you know how to do that, right?
I do.
Okay, perfect.
I was just having some issues when I called in before that I couldn't unmute myself. And
okay.
that's why I wasn't, but I do have it just in case.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks.
And then, perfect. And then Ms. Alvarez, I do see that you're here. I know you're a consultant. Do you want to just test your audio?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can, yes, perfect, wonderful. So you're welcome to mute yourself and turn your camera off, and Erica Smithies will be in attendance shortly. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to her. But
That sounds good.
perfect, thank you so much.
Does it read AES or is it backwards?
It looks AES forward.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to check.
Yay. All right, well,
you.
thank you so much.
Just so everyone knows, we are live streaming.
And Cindy, I can confirm that we are live streaming because I am seeing it on my iPad. There's a little bit of a delay, but
Fantastic.
it's working. So congratulations.
Oh, fantastic.
Madam City Clerk, shall we check sound?
Your sound is perfect.
Okay. Thank you. And I'll be sharing my screen for my COVID update.
I will make you a co-host.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Jeff. You sound good.
Good. I just wanted to make sure you can hear me. I'm going to check out for just a second, and I will be back in just a minute.
All right. Again, just so everybody knows that we are live streaming right now. Mark, it worked.
We may want to check others as well.
Did you hear me? First time we're live streaming since October. Does anybody else want to check their sound?
I did a check earlier, but when you were busy, Cindy. So everyone on the, everyone except Maya has tested.
Testing, testing.
You sound great.
Okay, perfect. Hi, this is Kelly. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, just let her bark for a minute. I'll be right out there.
Ethan, do you want to check your sound?
Can you hear me okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Anna, were you ever able to see the comments in that red line I sent over to you?
I have to check on my computer, which I'm also Zooming, so just 1 minute.
Okay.
It didn't show up on the iPad.
Ethan, this is Priya. I just want to let you know that I did check and I was able to work on my computer.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I don't know if that works as well on the iPad.
Oh, shit. Oh, crap.
Oh. Ethan, I can see it when I save it on my computer. Thank you.
Oh, great, thanks.
I may need to delay the meeting maybe 3 minutes. I just got word from the boardroom that he's having some setup AV equipment, so it'll just be a couple minutes.
Cindy, I'll just watch you and wait for your cue then when we're ready to go.
Chief Sorensen, are you able to, can we test your audio, please?
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And Mr. Lamb, can we test your audio too, please?
Sure, can you hear me? My
I
name is
can,
Curtis
thank you.
Lamb.
Thank you, Curtis.
For anybody just joining, we've got some technical issues. We're just waiting to hear from our city clerk. She'll let us know when we're ready to get going. So we'll just be a few minutes here, a few moments. Thank you. Thanks for your patience, folks. We're still working through this.
It should just do just maybe 2 more minutes. Okay, Mr. Mayor, please start the meeting.
Very well, thank you. Okay, here we go. I'm Mayor Jeff Ellsworth. This is the regular St. Helena City Council meeting of February 23rd, 2021. And Cindy, you're going to begin giving us some information about how people can make contact through our remotely, and then also our Spanish interpretation.
Yes, I sure will, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Tonight's meeting will have live Spanish interpretation. To access interpretation, you will need to use the Zoom application from either your cell phone, tablet, or computer. Instructions on how to use the Zoom app are listed in English and Spanish on the agenda posted on the city's website. Once you join the meeting from the Zoom application, you will see a small globe at the bottom or top of the screen. Click on the globe and you will be able to access the live interpretation. Marcy and Claudia are the interpreters this evening. And I will share my screen. This is how you will access public comment. When public comment is called, you would dial 669-900-6833. At the prompt, you enter the meeting ID, you press the pound, and then during public comment, you would press *9 to be able to speak and address the City Council.
Very good, thank you. So we'll move now to our Pledge of Allegiance. If folks would mute their microphones and place your hand on your, we'll do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we'll move to our roll call.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Here.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Good evening, everybody. I am here.
Councilmember Chateau?
Here.
Paul?
Here.
Hardy?
Here.
Very good. We'll be moving into our public forum section here. I just want to take a moment, just reminding folks we're still in, this COVID emergency. There's a need for continued community focus. We're going to get an update from the city manager as we get deeper into the meeting. But I just want to, preface the meeting by recognizing that we're still in a challenging situation that we're all going to have to keep working together through. And want to give my thanks and gratitude to everyone in the community and in the surrounding areas for the continued focus and work, and we will get through. So with that, I'm going to open the public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on matters of municipal concern not on the agenda, and each person's comments shall be limited to 4 minutes. Each person is entitled to speak on any non-agendized item only once at any meeting. Brief questions by council members for clarifications may be posed and answered, and council members may make requests that items be placed on future agendas, but in accordance with state law, no substantive discussion or action may take place unless and until the matter properly appears on the agenda. At this point, is there any public comment? Are there any folks in the queue who would like to speak?
I see a raised hand. And Cynthia, I'm going to allow you to talk. So you should be able to unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I did submit public comment through the, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
The screen. Okay. I did submit some public comment through a letter because I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to attend today. So I hope you had a chance to read that. We did gain 120 signatures in support of leaving the Hunt Avenue hub in its location on Hunt Avenue. We'd like to ask that you amend the March 9th agenda to not only consider alternative locations, many of which that were discussed have been considered in the past, leading up to the Hunt Avenue hub being established, but we'd like you to alter that agenda item to consider leaving the Hunt Avenue hub where it is currently for the foreseeable future, and if not, to maybe consider leaving it permanently. I will, if you are able to do that on March 9th, I'd like to submit also a letter that went to the United States League of Mayors from the National Restaurant Association for a blueprint for recovery for local governments to help restaurants. And that specifically asks that outdoor facilities remain and restaurants are given access through 2021 and longer to try to recover. Just because we go into the red tier and have 25% dining back and some indoor wine tasting back, that is not recovery. Recovery will take 3 to 5 years. We have been the most severely impacted industry of all industries in terms of sales. We know that restaurants are a huge part of the economic revenue for our city. And so we'd like to see you really consider leaving the hub where it is. And again, in 5 days, we garnered 127 signatures in support of the Hunt Avenue hub remaining.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Cindy, is there any other additional public comment?
I am not seeing any more raised hands, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. So we'll move forward from public comment. We'll close public comment and we'll move to our reports by staff and city council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. And with that, we'll begin with our city attorney, Mr. Walsh.
Good evening, Mayor. I have no report this evening.
Okay, and then we'll move to our city manager, Mr. Prestwich.
No report tonight.
And but we'll circle back with you on the COVID in the next section. Okay, and our finance director.
No report tonight. Thank you.
Our city clerk.
Nothing to report tonight.
Public Works. There was, perhaps you were muted. I'm assuming you'll do your other reports. Nothing here.
Sorry, no reports. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Planning and building.
Yes, we've released the zoning code manual to the subcommittee, and we have a meeting set up. So that's just a really important milestone. Thank you.
Very good, very good. And thank you for all the continued efforts on that. From our police and fire, do we have a representative here?
Yes, we do, Mayor, from the police department. I have nothing to report tonight. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And we'll move then to Councilmember Hall.
No updates.
Okay, Council Member Chateau.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Hardy.
Nothing here, thank you.
And Vice Mayor Doring.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two items. You know, it hasn't been lost on me that we have lost in our country 500,000 people due to COVID. And so sometimes we get numb to that and we just go on with our lives. But I think we need to take a moment here and say, wow, you know, that is unbelievable. The heartache caused by COVID is permeated throughout the country. And so I just want to offer my condolences and heartfelt, prayers to all those who believe in prayer. I'm sorry for a loss in our community in Napa County, but I don't want these meetings to go on and where we get to a point where we just take that for granted. So that would be one thing I want to acknowledge. Hopefully we can lower our flags to have staff at some point to recognize that. The other thing is I think it's important for us to get back into our team building session as soon as possible in the next couple of weeks. If we can find the time to do that, I think that is important. I think wounds have been opened and now we need to work on that. I may be even part of the wounds being opened and take responsibility for that to a certain degree. One of the things I think that we did not get a chance to talk about in our team building was all the great things we're doing, both on the council and in all the work we're doing in our committees and in our community. And so it may have left an impression that there's only one side to this issue, and that hurt me personally because I don't think that is a fair assessment of all of the work that we are doing. So I'd like to get back into team building and work on that. We have much work to do, but I think this council is committed to doing it. I see more that we have in common than what we don't have in common. And so hopefully we can get that done and schedule a meeting. So I would ask the manager to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm in support of that as well. And I just want to touch on that a little bit as well. I think that Vice Mayor Doring is correct in pointing out there's a lot we do agree on. There's work that we can get done, whether we agree on everything or not. And so those team building and communication exercises are helpful to that. I want to just read and sort of remind folks of our commitment to parliamentary procedure. We use Rosenberg's rules, which is an updated version of Robert's Rules of Order, so that we can have the best results from our meetings. I'm just going to read a little bit from that to sort of remind folks, and then hopefully everybody can sort of check on their own back in. And as we talk about team building, we're also working in understanding our parliamentary procedure and how we work as a legislative body, and quasi-judicial body, and the work that we do on the city council. So in the courtesy and decorum section of Rosenberg's rules, it says the rules of order are meant to create an atmosphere where the members of the body and the members of the public can attend to business efficiently, fairly, and with full participation. At the same time, it is up to the chair, which is in this case the mayor, and the members of the body, which are the members of the council, to maintain common courtesy and decorum. Unless the setting is very informal, it is always best for only one person at a time to have the floor. And it is always best for every speaker to be first recognized by the chair, in this case the mayor, before proceeding to speak. The chair should always ensure that debate and discussion of an agenda item focuses on the item and the policy in question, not the personalities of the members of the body. Debate on policy is healthy. Debate on personalities is not. The chair has the right to cut off discussion that is too personal, is too loud, or is too crude. I don't think we're going to have to get into those issues, but I just want to point out that there are standards through these rules of orders. Originally, we used Robert's rules, and now it's Rosenberg's rules. And I just encourage all of our members to refamiliarize themselves with that, and also to look at our Brown Act training and be familiar with the Brown, sort of the constraints of the Brown Act. So with that, I just want to support the vice mayor in looking towards further team building meetings, so we can, figure out how we can be productive, even though we don't necessarily agree on everything. So with that, then I just want to move on to a couple other subjects. Last week, I went to a forum on economic diversification in Napa County. It's a subject that's gaining a little bit of traction. Later this week, I have an economic task force meeting with a number of the supervisors and mayors talking about economic recovery from COVID. And so those discussions are certainly on the forefront of everybody's mind, and will take all of us putting effort towards how we come back from this, remarkably challenging year. So that's on the horizon. I also want to just take a moment. In June, every year we have Pride Month. We, as a body, have elected to fly the Pride flag to recognize the members of our community, the LGBTQ plus members of our community, to support and stand with our full spectrum community. One of the things I've done, I'm trying to sort of encourage thinking about that a little bit earlier. I put a what's called the progress flag. This is the pride flag with the trans colors, also the black and brown stripe on my pickup truck. And the idea is I'd like to, encourage more folks to say we don't want to have to just wait until June to recognize that we're a full spectrum community and celebrate that diversity and inclusivity. So putting a pride flag on a pickup truck or a tractor or a car or whatever we do to sort of open our welcoming arms to a full spectrum community. Another aspect that we're working on is climate. We have this Friday our County Climate Action Committee meeting. And so this is an opportunity for all of our municipalities to work together with our unincorporated areas of supervisorial area. One of the concerns I have is that perhaps some of our agricultural lobbying bodies may not have fully recognized or acknowledged climate change and the need for climate action. So I think through bodies like this Climate Action Committee, we as elected officials and as community members can help those who are not yet there in understanding that we all need to work together to get to these goals of drawdown by 2030, which is less than 9 years away. So that'll be happening on Friday. One of the things I've done is I've reached out to find out a little bit more about electric tractors and electric tractors and electric pickup trucks and trucks are a coming thing. And so that's something that I'm going to be sort of presenting as we look at what we can all do to work together, whatever sector we're in, to recognize climate change and the need for climate action. So with that, I will move on. We'll move to our presentations and public recognitions. Seeing none there, we'll move to our staff briefings. And I see 7.1, and this is our City of St. Helena and Water Audit California joint statement regarding protection of public trust resources. And this is something that I will, a statement that I will read.
Mayor, I think I'm just going to introduce the item so that there's.
Please, Mr.
Yeah,
Wallace.
so
Appreciate it.
sure. So just to give the public some background on how we got to this point. So as the council knows, the city received a letter from Water Audit California in November of last year that asserted certain components of the city's water operations were having a negative impact on public trust resources. And in that letter, Water Audit indicated that if the city didn't take certain actions, that they would initiate litigation. So in response to that letter, my office reached out to Water Audit's legal counsel to discuss their concerns and to determine whether there was a way that we could move forward without litigation. So through these conversations on the issues raised in the letter with Water Audit and subsequent conversations that we had with the council, it was clear that there was some common ground between the parties with regard to these issues. In particular, there's a shared desire between us to protect our public trust resources and an acknowledgement that there is a need to acquire additional scientific data to support an analysis of whether the city's water policy decisions adversely impact public trust resources. So in light of these common goals that we had, we decided it would be appropriate for the city and Water Audit to issue a joint statement that provides background on these common concerns and outlines certain steps that we plan to take going forward to address our needs. The statement that you have in your packet lists certain short, medium, and long-term steps that we plan to take to ensure that we are taking public trust resources into account in our decision-making and to generate the scientific data needed to inform our water policy decisions and to make certain information that's generated is publicly available to allow for a robust public discussion of these issues. I'm not going to go through the individual steps as they're laid out in the statement, but if there's any questions that are raised from those, we're happy to respond to those. And this is really a first step that confirms the importance of our public trust resources and the need to continue to generate data for informed decision-making going forward. And as we generate that data, we plan to continue our dialogue with Water Audit and the community as a whole on these issues to help inform the council's decision-making. So with that, if there are questions from the council, I'm happy to respond to those. We also have Sean Haggerty on the line from my office, who, as the council knows, took the lead in this matter on behalf of the city. So if there's questions for him, he's available as well.
Thank you, Ethan. Are there any questions from council? I'm seeing Mr. Hall's hand.
Thanks, Ethan. I just wanted to clarify. This is basically a non-binding statement of common goals, I guess. And I just want to make sure that the community understands that. I think, unfortunately, this headline makes it sound like there's a lot more to it. I think what we discovered with Water Audit is that we care as much about our water resources as Water Audit does. And so I think it is a good exercise that we have a joint statement, that we have common goals. And I think our broader community also just needs to be aware that despite what the headline reads, I'm not sure that we've changed any of our existing municipal code in any way as a result of this joint statement. And I just wanted to make sure folks understood that.
Thank you. Any other council comments at this point or questions? Thank you. Mr. Walsh, is it appropriate for me to read this now, or should we leave it there with questions? I could read the first two paragraphs if that helps truncate it.
Sure. It is pretty long, and it's meant for, for the public. We wanted to get something comprehensive out there. And I did just want to note, this isn't a formal agreement. It's really a statement going forward, but it does outline steps that we do plan to take going forward as part of our, collecting information and making decisions going forward. So while it's not, I would say saying it's a formal agreement is incorrect. It does state our intent going forward to proceed to collect information and get the data that we need and to take certain steps with Water Audit to kind of move forward in a more collaborative sense.
Okay, very good. And, I'll just read the first two paragraphs just to put it out there a little bit, but won't go through the whole thing. So I'll just jump in. It'll just take a moment here. The public trust doctrine imposes an affirmative duty on state and local government agencies to protect our streams, lakes, marshlands, and tidelands, and the diversity of life that depend on those waters. The City of St. Helena and Water Audit California are issuing this joint statement to affirm our mutual commitment to protect public trust resources. We report to the public that we will take short, medium, and long-term actions to acquire the credible scientific data needed to support an analysis of whether the city's water policy decisions adversely impact public trust resources. This credible science will permit the city to incorporate an assessment of the full array of impacts from water use and water department operations on public trust resources and their beneficial uses, including use by humans, into future water policy decisions and water department operations. Water Audit will participate in and contribute to this process. Human use of groundwater and surface water may result in impacts to public trust resources, including rivers and streams that support fish and wildlife and recreational uses. Understanding the nature of these impacts is complicated by climate change, upstream land use changes, human use of water, groundwater, surface water interaction, and other factors. When public trust resources are degraded or lost, the causes may not be obvious. A century or more ago, the Napa River and Sulphur Creek were known for their abundant fish. The intervening decades have seen a decline in both the fish population and the summer flows in these important streams. Although very dry summer conditions have been observed in the Napa River in the past, for example, in 1965, the 1976 to 1977 drought, and the drought in the early 1990s, since the mid-2000s, there have been increased periods of sustained dryness in portions of the Napa River that should not be ignored. According to official reports of regulatory agencies, these drying conditions and other factors can cause serious injury to public trust resources. So I'll stop there, and the idea is that we'll all work together to do as much as we can to protect these resources. So thank you, Mr. Walsh, for your work, and Mr. Haggerty, if he is on as well.
And Mayor, I know we don't typically do this with staff briefing items, but since this is an area of particular importance, I think it would be worthwhile to entertain public comment if there is any on this issue.
Okay, very good. I appreciate the suggestion. So with that, I will open the public comment, and I'll look to our city clerk to see if there is public comment.
I am not seeing any hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so with that, we will move off of. Oh yes, Mr. Doring.
Just one clarification. So several times during your presentation, City Attorney Walsh, you said "we," and the public could be confused by who "we" is. I want to make it clear that this statement is at the direction of the City Council with the blessing of the City Council, and is not simply a document produced unilaterally by the City Attorney's Office, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We were working at the direction of the City Council. And this is really a statement. Particularly, we had a subcommittee that was working with us on this issue, helping us to produce the statement, and then it was vetted with the entire City Council. So it does represent the views of the City Council on this issue. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. That's fine. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Okay, with that, then we will move on to our item 7.2. This is our update on wastewater treatment plant upgrade project by Ms. Smithies, our Public Works Director and City Engineer.
Actually, items 7.2 and 7.3 should be deferred to the items that are on the agenda under old business and new business. Thank you.
Okay, we will get to those then. And then we'll move to item 7.4. This is our City Manager COVID update.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And what you should see in front of you now is a table that shows the blueprint for a safer reopening. The city.
Mark, I'm just seeing a screen
desktop.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it. Okay, let me see here. we'll share it over on this side then. How's that?
I'm not seeing anything. There we go. Something's coming up here. There we go.
Okay, I think you'll see it now. So this is the state's blueprint for a safer economy framework. And Napa County, all of the cities and towns, the town in Napa County, we are currently in the widespread purple tier. However, good news, the case rates across the state continue to drop. And today, Napa County is meeting the red tier category for the adjusted case rate. And we are meeting the moderate category under the positivity rate, both for the entire county, along with the health equity quartile. So that's good news. And today, the state announced that, I'll go back to this slide, the state today moved 5 additional counties out of purple and into either the red tier or the orange tier, the moderate tier. And while the most of the state is still in the purple tier, it's foreseeable that in approximately 2 weeks, as we meet these metrics for the red tier and soon the orange tier, that Napa County and other counties throughout the state will be moving out of the purple tier into the red and orange and beyond. And what that means for our restaurants in particular is that those restaurants will begin to receive indoor dining again. That would be in the red tier at 25% occupancy, in the orange tier 50% capacity. When we look at Napa County in particular, these are the metrics for this county as of today. So our adjusted case rate is 6.8. Our positivity rate is 2.5, and our health equity quartile positivity rate is 3.6. These two meet the orange tier, the 6.8 meets the red tier. And in approximately 2 weeks is when we anticipate transitioning from purple to red. As a reminder, the county and all of our cities are encouraging the community to turn to myturn.ca.gov. This is where you register for COVID shots. And it's a fairly quick questionnaire. It probably takes less than a couple of minutes. If you haven't signed up, it's very easy to do. And this gets you in line for vaccinations. It is prioritized. And I'm proud to report that Napa County is among the leaders across the state in terms of the number of vaccinations per capita. And so we'll continue to, as the vaccine supply arrives, we'll continue to distribute those vaccines throughout the county. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions from the council? I'm seeing Ms. Chateau.
Yes, thank you, Mark, so much for that presentation. Do you have any information on what tier is getting vaccinated right now, or who is getting vaccinations? Are they going back to, I know last week it was they were focusing on the second shot. Are they back to doing first shots? And if so, who?
Right. In St. Helena, it's the second shot for people that met eligibility, and typically that was tier 1A and tier 1B. I don't have that table to show you tonight that shows who's involved in all of those various tiers. It is a bit of a changing structure, and so I know that there are continuing evolutions of how that vaccine distribution is perhaps evolving. But at this point, it's typically the 1B, and perhaps at times, if there are available vaccinations at whatever site around the state. Some counties are moving through, they may have an older population, for example, and there's more people in the tier 1B than other counties where they may move through 1B and move into 1C. So you will hear stories of how vaccinations occur differently around the state, and that does influence this. But at this point, it's typically the 1B, and we'll be seeing movement into the 1C area relatively soon as well.
Thank you.
Any other council comments or questions here at this point? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Presswich, for that. And it is remarkable. Napa County, last week, we were number 4 in the state out of counties in terms of per 100,000 vaccines per 100,000. We can really thank the sort of the coordination with the county and our local health care providers who've really stepped up. And so if we all just hang in there with increasing vaccinations and the lessening of the spread in terms of the numbers, we're feeling like we're getting some footing towards moving into a better spot. As we said, we're gonna, our numbers are looking towards the red out of the purple. And I just want to keep putting out there, if there are folks, whether it's a business or personal, who are struggling, we don't want to lose anybody here after such challenges for a year. If anybody needs to reach out to the city, the county for assistance or help in any way, please do so. If you know of anybody or if you yourself, please reach out, and we will see everybody through. We will be able to direct folks to resources to make it through this. So very much appreciated. Thank you, Mark. Okay, with that, we will move, and also just one more thank you to our staff. I believe that watching city and county staff over the last year, folks have been working, I would say, 4 times as hard to keep the ship of the city and the county moving forward in this emergency circumstances. So again, the incredible work of our staff needs to be appreciated. So thank you. And so we'll move to our consent items, and we'll start with, I'll just read through if anybody wants to pull one or just put up a hand, and I'll watch for the hands, or you can let me know. 8.1, we'll move to 8.2. We'll move to 8.3. We'll move to 8.4. And we'll move to 8.5. And seeing no hands to pull an item, I'll call for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second. And a roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Dory,
Yes.
Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Chateau,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. So that's our consent calendar. Now what we're going to do, we're going to make a little change in tonight's agenda. We're going to go to item 11.1 in the new business item. This is regarding our water resources. And so that I'm going to scroll down. And this is the informational report on City of St. Helena safe yield analysis, related water emergency regulations, and water neutrality policy. And Ms. Smithies is going to lead us into this discussion.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. I second we need a team effort. Both April and I will be presenting this evening to discuss the different aspects. This was an item brought to city staff attention to discuss the informational update to council and the members of the community, especially in light of where we are with our water supply today and lack of precipitation. We're first going to kind of go over our informational report on safe yield, related water emergencies, and then our water neutrality policy. The safe yield definition, as provided in the report, is the annual yield of the St. Helena water supply system, which can be reliably delivered on an annual basis through most rainfall years, including a dry year, of 22 inches to 25.9 inches. We just barely got to 22 inches in the past rainfall year, and right now we're under 12 inches of rain, I believe. And the goal was that the Safe Yield Committee was that, we try to get through 2 years of a dry rainfall without too much of a hardship on water customers, but I don't think they're predicting 2 very dry years in a row, because we're headed that way this year without a lot of rain in the forecast. It was on December 14, 2010, the Safe Yield Committee was ascertained, that was appointed by council to ascertain the safe yield water supply. And then the report in attachment 1 of the staff report goes into depth of their outstanding report and the recommendations that for the most part were implemented by the city over the next couple of years. I believe this year is really the first year that it's being tested with the amount of rainfall we had last year and what we're receiving this year. And the safe yield determination at that time was 1,950 acre feet. And then you do a net safe yield based on the water loss you do a 5-year rolling average, which we'll get to in the slideshow, and then do a water loss analysis. Here we go. The annual water loss was for the last 3 years was 17%, 9%, and 7%. The average is 11% for the last 3 years. 60% is the industry standard based on an EPA report in 2007. I don't know if that number's gone up or down, or if it's pretty much along the same line. The Safe Yield Committee used 15% as their 15% as their percent loss at the time of 2011. So we're on the same edge. And I just go back on the staff report. I flipped the numbers and apologize for that. I had delivery numbers, consumption numbers at the top, and production at the bottom. When really the production numbers is the large number, and the consumption is the actual water delivered to customers. Okay, next slide. And then here's the calculation of the water supply usage over a 5-year period. This is part of the criteria of that's number one criteria for indicating whether or not we're going into a phase 1 emergency, whether we're in a surplus or deficit of our annual safe yield. As you can see, our 5-year average, and of course my screen is just cut off. Our 5-year average on July 1st of 2020 was 1,645. On July 1, our water loss for the prior water year was 7%. So you multiply that number by the safe yield by the committee, and our number was 1,814, indicating that we were in a surplus on July 1. Next slide. Here are the times we've established phase 1, the emergency this past year. Phase 1 was implemented on July 1st. Phase 2 was implemented on November 1st. And then phase 3 is to be determined and is triggered if the volume does not anticipate expect demands through November 1st of 2021. This is phase 3 is something that we need to keep a watchful eye. Our cutoff for taking in water at Bell Canyon is April 15th of this year. If we do not see substantial rainfall, whether it's 4 inches in a weekend or the next couple of months, we really need to start looking at, are we going to be able to meet demands through November 1st of this coming year, and whether we need to go to a phase 3. Next slide, sorry. Bell Canyon was a design capacity of 2,500 acre feet. There's an old outstanding water right that we have a wheeler right now with Carpenter. The Carpenter, there's a Carpenter contract. They had a prior water right of 100 acre feet on Bell Creek. When we put the dam in, they're still allowed that water right, leaving about 2,400 acre foot available to the citizens or rate users or the customers of the city of St. Helena. We're currently at a 40% capacity. With as of yesterday's date, we're at 40.1%. We gained a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but not a whole lot. The comparable year would be 2013-14 when we entered February at 38%. So it's possible we still could get some rain and get us out of this, but right now we're still fairly low for this time of year. There is a bathymetric survey scheduled for this coming summer. If we do not get much rainfall, the silver lining with the low reservoir would be trying to get that surveyed as soon as possible. In the report, we provided a 2001 survey comparison to the design capacity, and it showed over a 40-year period we had not lost much capacity, if it was negligible. The city of Napa just undertook a recent survey of Milliken and Hennessy reservoirs, and they found a negligible decrease in capacity as well. So it could be possible that we could do a standard survey this summer with maybe some sounding and where there's water to make the similar determination, but would highly recommend we get this done this year. And there may be dredging required, there may not be, depending on how the survey shows comparatively to the design capacity. Next slide. We just want to show the last 20 years of the different capacities at Bell Canyon. Not that we want to focus Bell Canyon, but it is our largest water supply source. Our other water sources are Stonebridge Wells and the city of Napa. But this kind of shows a comparison on our different, by May of each year where we were. That's the blue line. And then you have our November capacity status, and our December capacity status is the gray line. And you can see prior to getting City of Napa water before 2008, we would get really low in the winter months at Bell Canyon. We were using 2007 as a guidance kind of last year because they were only at 69% by May of 2007, and last year we were only at 62% in May. Oh, Eric, you have a question?
Is the left scale just percentages?
Yes, percent of capacity. Percent
Okay,
capacity of Bell Canyon.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
And we actually finished up better in 2020 than we thought we were projected earlier in the year. And that we haven't done projections yet for this coming November. So that's something that needs to be moved up next on the list is where do we fall if we continue not to get much rain? Where are we gonna come up with in November so we can do that next trigger point? And another thing for history, for those not realizing, we went away from a capacity trigger point because of the bringing City of Napa water online. The Safe Field Committee wanted to make sure that we had a more well-rounded approach at looking at all three water sources combined and not just focusing on Bell Canyon. Now that you have three sources at hand and a potential allocation of 200 acre feet more draw from the City of Napa. In 2007, we only had a 400 acre foot allocation. Post Safe Field Committee, we bumped that up to 600 acre feet with the option to buy an additional acre feet, 200 acre feet in years that we need it. Next slide. Did we skip a section, or is this the water neutrality policy? Was adopted by City Council in 2011. It applies to new development. The goal of the water neutrality is no net increase on the city's total water supply. It also ties into the CalClean requirements of 2007 of just water conservation measures, and it just narrows it in more, requiring all new homes, new water demands, new businesses to offset their water demand on the city's potable system. The opportunities right now is updating the water neutrality policy. That was the goal of the master utility plan. Is also creating the will serve policy. The will serve and the water neutrality policy, they tie in both together because it's users outside the city that may be building that are already on the city system, but also updating it to provide opportunities for recycled water lines or other new offsets. Right now, we only have in lieu fees that I can approve. In lieu, there's only retrofit allowed right now that the Public Works Director can approve, or City Council can approve in lieu fees that doesn't really reduce the net demand. But there's also innovation measures such as recycled water line that was recently adopted by Council as a solution to the farmstead new demand, to offset their new demand. Next slide, please. I'm going to transfer this over to April at this point just to talk about the water reduction incentives that we have to date and move on to the users.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Mayor, I do see that one of our Spanish translators has her hand raised. So I don't know if she has a comment maybe about how we're presenting for the translation.
Not at all. Excuse the interpreter. For some reason, I don't know if it was a technical issue, the interpreter was kicked out of the interpreter platform. Can somebody promote me back to the interpreting platform, please? Thank you so much. And I will lower the hand. Thanks.
Cindy, are you able to do that? To re-promote her? Great, thank you.
Okay, so the next few slides are really about the water reduction, what's going on, what are some of the things and the trends that we're seeing within our water system. So I won't read this verbatim, but currently the city does have several water reduction incentives available to them. Everything is available within, actually by contacting the Public Works Department. Martine Beltran oversees this. We do have a toilet retrofit program, smart irrigation controllers, cash for grass, laundry to landscape, which is using laundry, gray water done from laundry, converting it over to landscape use. rainwater harvesting, recirculating hot water pumps, as well as we do offer free water conservation supplies. Typically, you could go right into City Hall, but since we do have limited hours, what you would need to do is contact the Public Works Department, and they can arrange, and we do have several of these supplies still available. The next slide just gives you an overall picture of what our water customer type is and our water customer use. So you can see within all of the users within St. Helena, we have single family homes are 83%, and then multifamily residential is 4%. So overall, residential, sorry, my dog is deciding he wanted to be bad. My apologies. So overall, residential customers do make up 87% of our total water customer type, and the rest is taken up by commercial, other, and landscaping. And as far as customer use, on the flip side, residential uses 50%. So they make up 87% of our customer base, but they utilize 50% of the water. And then you can see it's industrial, commercial, other, and then landscape is 3%. The average use per month, so this is based on the single family residential. We did not include multifamily mobile home developments as non-residential, but you can see for single family homes, you have your off-peak period, which is November to April, which we're in right now, which is a very good thing because it means per household, it's less water that's typically being used. So the average 100 cubic feet use of water during the non-peak periods per month is 7 cubic feet, which is just a little over 5,200 gallons per month per residential home. So that's the average for all residential homes within the city of St. Helena. For the peak period, which is May through October, it jumps up to 17 cubic feet, which is almost 13,000 gallons per month. The difference between the two is the use of irrigation. So this is something that now that we're in our off-peak period, if you do look at the staff report in the attachments, it is very specific on times you should be using your irrigation. It's very specific on days of the week that you should be using your irrigation. But right now during off-peak period, because the ground is still wet, we do have some moisture that's in the ground, people typically turn off their irrigation. So that's why you see the difference. This is going to be really important as we get into, especially like today, tomorrow, you have some very hot days. Just a good reminder for all of the residents within the city of St. Helena to keep on with the water conservation. Make sure that you do, your drip systems, your irrigation is in compliance with the city's code, because that is where more water is going to start to be used as the temperatures rise. Again, just a quick reminder right now that we are in the phase 2. I think we've talked about it over and over again. We are trying to get a good idea of how many people per residential household. So I am doing a little promotion here for everybody to go to the cityofsthelena.org/water survey, and please complete those surveys. And again, as Erica stated, this is an informational item, and her and I, as well as the city manager, are available for any questions as well as further council discussion on this topic.
Thank you, April. I'm getting the full screen back so I can see when the screen is shared. It's a little bit difficult sometimes for me to see people putting up hands. So if something does come up and you feel an urgent need, do speak up if we need to interject something. Sometimes with that shared screen, it's hard to see everybody. But now I can see everybody, and we're at a question period here. Are there any thoughts, comments, or questions from the council at this point? I'm seeing Vice Mayor Doring.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. It's good to review these different items. And I'm glad you made that correction regarding the production of the consumption, because I stared at that chart for several minutes and was, what? And I have a pretty good comfort with math. And anyway, that's good. A question regarding the 25% reserve for fire emergencies. Do you know, or can you find out whether that is something that is negotiable with the state under our permit if we get to that point? I would encourage us to look into that, but maybe I'll wait for your answer first.
I have not, if that is on our permit, then that's something I've overlooked. But when we spoke when we first went to a phase 2, the water board reached out to us. We've been having monthly meetings to discuss where we're at and where we need their help on situations with water concerns. And they see the water in the reservoir as water available to us. They see our wells as water available to us, except for we have these policies in place for 25% reserve, limiting our well usage to 450. But that is something that they asked us to look at. They've also discussed the potential of looking at neighbors where we can get more water. Napa's one of them, and potentially others closer to us. But as far as the, I just lost my train of thought there. I apologize. But
I just want to make sure we have some room to maneuver with the 25%, whether that is a hard and fast legal requirement under our permit, or that's something we could, drop down to 20% if we need to, or.
Well, I think the other problem with the 25% is the dead pool factor. That's where I lost, is that we start getting lower, we start getting that dead pool. We also have our chemical intake. We also lost our permanganate pretreatment facility below the dam. So we're going to get the taste and odor issues, which has also been a concern of the city of Napa. Thank you. Yes.
Understood. But we should check into that anyway, even with those factors. Have we started a conversation with the city of Napa with respect to the potential additional purchase of 200 acre feet? Is that conversation at least going on, and is there a reception to that idea?
Yes, sir. We broached that topic last year when we were going into, it looked like a drought, and then we actually met on Zoom today with Phil Brunn, the director of the City of Napa Water Department, today with Mark Prestwich and myself to discuss that and the ability. There's also been a concern about the city's ability to draw anything over 600 acre feet. And if you look at our past monthly billings and our metered usage from the city of Napa, we've been able to draw between 64 to 67 acre feet per month in the past, which if you do the math, it's over 640 to 810 acre feet per year. Not that we've tested it over a full course year, but over a course of a year, we do have the ability to draw that much water.
I saw that Councilmember Hall had a question. I had just one more question, and I'll defer to Councilmember Hall. My thinking is that the community as individuals may not have a feel for the benefits of conservation, and I'm trying to figure out a way where the whole community has buy-in to conservation. And I'm wondering, is it mathematically or technologically possible to come up with an amount of water that we need to save between now and November, or now and sometime, a percentage of water or an acre feet or whatever, and then have sort of monthly updates, sort of like the thermometer approach when we're trying to raise money, something comparable to that, where the community can say, hey, this is what we need to save, and this is where we are. So the entire community can buy in on the need to conserve water for our community. I don't know if that's possible, or anyway, I think that's an idea that I think would resonate with our community, to try to get everybody on board together, the entire community. I'll defer to Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Doring. I'm seeing as well, Mr. Hall had raised his hand. So please, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Doring. I just was trying to clarify the question about the 25%. So it sounds like, Erica, that's actually, we impose that ourselves. Clearly there's a dead pool below the outlet line that's just going to sit there, but there's some amount above that we've established as a wildlife and fire reserve.
I would need to confirm that and make sure it's not a state requirement in the permit.
Okay, and similarly in the permits, the Pope Street pumps, obviously, we all want to be sensitive to it, but the cap that is in place today, that's a self-imposed cap that the city came up with. You're saying the permits and our license to operate those pumps, run them all you want, so long as you don't get in trouble with anybody.
Correct.
Okay, and then Vice Mayor, I was just thinking, if I'm understanding this, so Bell Canyon Reservoir, our current capacity, let's say, is about 2,500 acre feet. We're at 40% now. That means we've got about 1,000 acre feet there. If we keep a 25% in reserve, that's another 600, 625 acre feet that must remain. So that leaves us with less than 400 acre feet at Bell Canyon, assuming we get no more rain. We're halfway through the year, so assuming we're pulling 600 acre feet from Napa, we've got 300 left. And we all want to be sensitive about the wells, but it looks like our safe yield is around 140 acre feet a month. We've got 5 months to go before July 1. So we need about another 700 acre feet. So between Bell Canyon and the pipeline, we've got 700 right there. So we're gonna have to rely on the wells or some rain or something else. We still need to look at sourcing additional water. If we can get it up pipe from Napa, that's the best, fastest, cheapest way to do it. Would probably hit our timeline, I guess, which is hopefully we get some rain here. Otherwise, we're out of water by June.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I'm seeing Ms. Chateau with a hand up. Are you, Mr. Hall, are you complete in your statements there? Okay. Ms. Chateau?
Okay, I do want to ask, and I want to acknowledge that I didn't ask you, Ms. Smithies, ahead of time, so you don't have to answer. But my question is, do we have other sources that are possible that we could talk about?
Well, there's the 200 acre feet which you can't get overnight. It's got to be over time. But there's also the state water board, the Department of Drinking Water, just submitted a letter to us about the possibility of looking at our neighbors northeast of us, which is the Howell Mountain District and the Venice Hospital. So looking at that tide, they reached out to us after the fires on the ability to provide them water. We do have a pipeline that goes right by sanitarium. So there is a potential to get gravity flow potentially from them through a pipeline connection along Crystal Springs to sanitarium. So, but that's a longer discussion, but that is a possibility.
Okay, thank you. And then my only other question was, with that percentage that we lose every year, and I know it was higher because of the fires, so that's just something that could happen. Is there anything we can do to decrease that water loss that we as a council could look at?
Infrastructure improvements, water meter upgrades. They vary from year to year. The 17-18 was a 17% water loss. We had that major water main break at Rutherford. That maybe not everyone realizes, but we lost a lot of water that day. And I remember quite a few breaks that year, one on Zinfandel. There were some fire hydrants hit, but those all account for it. And we also flushed water that year because 17-18 we started, or maybe not 17-18, yeah, I'm sorry, I think it was 16-17. We had the major record rainfall year. But those are what happens. Some years you might get down to 6 or 7%. It's because we didn't have major breaks, or because of drought, we did less flushing. We still have to do flushing to get rid of the dead end water source at cul-de-sacs where the water line does not loop into others to circulate. So there's just different operational water losses, and then there's the water losses through hydrants. If there is a fire, this coming year will be interesting to see what the water loss is through hydrants, because we did have the fires impact the city limits. And water usage at different sources. So water use out of the reservoir would be unaccounted for because that's before it hits the meter. So once we produce it, we have the water, and then when it gets to the customer meter, that's where that water loss calculation comes from.
Thank you.
I'm going to check in with Mr. Hardy to see if he has any comments, and then I'm going to open it to public comment. Mr. Hardy, at this point, do you have any comments or questions?
I do, Mayor Ellsworth. I think I'd like to present some comments now in part to give any interested members of the public a better opportunity to respond. First, I just want to explain that when I requested that these matters be placed on a future agenda, I did so with the goal of having a discussion here at a council meeting that would lead to some at least initial further direction to staff so that we can begin a process that I envision as both updating and coordinating these various policies and policy tools that we have in place, because I think they all relate to both managing our water supply and monitoring our use. And I think those two things together are the key to having a set of policies that ensure that our water supply is sustainable in the sense that we have the ability to meet our essential needs, if not under all rainfall and related conditions, at least most of the time. And I think that's always been the goal of the city's policies. Water neutrality is the newest, but even 30 years ago, there was a calculation as to what a reliable yield at Bell Canyon was, and we had a water emergency structure very similar to what we have today. But what's really for me, sort of compelling my sense that we need to revisit all of these things and make sure that they're coordinated and work together well, is my conviction that in the face of climate change and with some real experience over the last decade as to what that looks like, I think planning for the future really requires revisiting the concept of safe yield, amongst other things, because I don't think it is prudent any longer to assume that future rainfall amounts and patterns can be projected based on our historic averages or long-term view. I think we're really going to do much better, and I could put it more strongly. I think it's actually very important that we take into account the very real possibility that average rainfall in the next period, however we define it, is going to be something less than what it's been historically. And I think, an updated safe yield policy would more likely than not, if it takes climate change into effect, generate a lower number. Similarly, with the evolution not merely of the public trust doctrine, but also the development of much better tools for understanding groundwater surface water interaction and all that comes with that in terms of how the public trust doctrine applies and what is likely to come out over time from the county's groundwater sustainability plan. I suspect that the most prudent thing to do is to anticipate in thinking about safe yield some changes both in how we manage our use of the municipal wells, but also on average what they contribute to our supply. So I think planning for the future really means planning conservatively and planning for some reduction in our total supply. Once I start thinking about that, I think, well, that has consequences potentially for how we define the triggers or thresholds for water emergency actions. And it also really elevates the significance of conservation measures and all the different ways that we use them or adopt them. And so amongst the things that, didn't work their way onto the list of subject matter for staff to report on are things like our development standards for new projects and the kinds of landscaping requirements we have and fixture requirements and other things that we do in development standards that go to manage a water demand. Our water neutrality policy is part of that. And I've really taken to heart some of the comments that Tom Belt has made over the years. And I think it's actually quite important that we look for some opportunities and ways to compare actual water use at projects that have been approved under our water neutrality policy and compare the actual water use with the projected water use that was part of the water neutrality report. I think we need to develop some tools to measure the progress. And I'm reminded of Peter Drucker's sort of business management maxim that we manage what we measure, and what he meant by that was that when you're setting goals for management of a system, if you don't have a way to measure your progress, you don't really know where you are. So I think that's an important task moving forward on the water neutrality policy. It may be working really well, or it may need some improvement, but it's really hard for us to know without developing some measurement tools. And I really think, and this is an ambitious goal, but I've brought this up because I think it's very important and that we should think ambitiously. I think our approach to water supply management and conservation measures and all of these interrelated things needs to be as comprehensive as it can be. And I think in some ways, the framework that's mandated by Sigma for the groundwater sustainability plan is a really useful one, because it involves setting thresholds that as one approaches the thresholds, then you need to start implementing certain measures so that you don't cross a critical line. And of course, to some extent, that is already what we're doing with our water emergency regulations. But my best sense is that we could be doing it in a more comprehensive and holistic way. And I'm really just looking to start a conversation this evening that enables our staff to take some direction so that the next time we have this subject on our agenda, and I think it's going to take, I'm talking about starting a process that's going to require multiple discussions, but we need to give staff enough direction that tonight that they can come back to us with some further suggestions on how we can move the ball forward here. And so that's my view of what this is about. And I look forward to further discussion with the council and comments from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. And I see that Mr. Hall had raised his hand. What I'm hoping is that folks can use the electronic hand as much as possible. That's the easiest way for me to see. Mr. Hall, how do you feel about me opening public comment? Would you like to make your comments before that?
That sounds great. If my hand was raised, I was I don't know why it was raised. I
Okay.
was
Gotcha.
swatting
All right.
flies or something.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to appreciate everybody's comments. We'll move now to a public comment and see if our city clerk is seeing any hands raised for public comment.
There are no raised hands, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so with that, we'll bring it back to the council. I've got a few comments I want to make, and then we can sort of circle in here. Mr. Hardy's comments in terms of looking at comprehensively approaching this and recognizing that what has historically been may not be what the future looks like if we're recognizing the realities of climate change. I think we've got to be recognized that we share our resource with a very large beverage industry, which brings a lot of benefits to the area, but also is a very thirsty industry. And so that's part of how we look at how we manage our resource. The resource doesn't necessarily understand our jurisdictional boundaries. We have political boundaries of cities, counties, et cetera. The resource is a natural resource that responds to laws of nature, laws of gravity, et cetera. We harvest much of our resource outside of our jurisdiction. I believe it's a comprehensive conversation that involves our partners in the county and other municipalities. I'm heartened by the work of the Groundwater Sustainability Plan Advisory Committee, also the Napa County Drought Contingency Plan, along with the LAFCO Municipal Services Review, give us a mapping of our resources that we have not had in the past, comprehensive mapping. So I do think the comprehensive approach that looks at the fact that St. Helena is it's an organ in a larger body. The resource, like blood in our bodies, it doesn't stop at one organ and it moves through. And so what I would ask, I guess, is certainly if there are more council comments, but asking our engineering department and our city manager to think about what is the best way to get a comprehensive approach, because it's clear we're going to get into a very difficult situation. And the more prepared we are ahead of time, looking at all aspects of this, the better we'll be able to fare. And I want to also recognize Mr. Doring's the idea of something fairly simple to go out to the community to understand where we are and what our goals are. Will help get the community, I believe, on board with what we need to do as we move into what we can hope for rain, but if it's not coming, we need to be prepared and have our community ready to know what they need to do. Mr. Walsh, did I see a hand from you?
No, not from me.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so those are my thoughts. If recognizing that all these aspects are critical, how can we look at them comprehensively, and then look also at where we can procure more water, how we can work with the resource we have, but really understanding it, quantifying it, being able to measure it so that we can properly manage it. So are there any other council comments? I want to kind of put that question to our engineer and our city manager, what they think is a path to pulling this conversation in comprehensively. Am I seeing Ms. Smithies, any thoughts on how we?
I don't know if we really had a question, or we just want to theoretically think about how we can comprehensively review it. I mean, that's what we were kind of presenting tonight, the information of how we provide water to date.
So if what we're looking at is a next step, as Mr. Hardy, and Mr. Hall, I'll come back to you in just a moment. As Mr. Hardy brought up, this is the beginning of a process, at the beginning of the steps. If from our engineering side and our management side, my thought is looking at what is the next step to, looking at taking these things and updating the way we look at them in a comprehensive way. And Mr. Hall, do you have any thoughts here?
Well, I was just going to say, my thought is, first, Lester, thank you. I think that's kind of the right approach collectively. I don't know how else as a region we can consider it. At the same time, if we're using 140 acre feet a month and we've got 700 acre feet available, you know, we need to procure water right now in parallel. And I think, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned a number of regional boards and bodies, all of which are very helpful, and they're all looking at these issues. I don't know if they are going to help solve our immediate issue, which is a need here in town. So my thought would be, Erica mentioned that there's an ongoing conversation right now with the city of Napa. And if we need an additional 200 acre feet, it sounds like it's available. So I don't know what this council needs to do. If we need to tell staff, you know, keep us out of phase 3 emergency and buy water to supplement if needed, then that would be your guys' decision to do that. So if we get rain and we get above 40%, we get to 45 or 50% at the reservoir, then great, maybe there's no need to do it. But I think it would be helpful to provide staff some sort of current lever that they can use to make decisions and help manage our current crisis, while we are also engaging in a regional discussion.
I think that's very sound. I think that idea of dual tracking and looking for what we can empower staff to do in terms of procuring. Did I see Ms. Smithies?
I did. I saw the Councilmember Hardy's hand up too as well. So once I heard what you were asking for, I would recommend that we move forward with trying to we're a little behind right now with our draw from the city of Napa. If we're trending on the same as last year, we're a little bit lower than last year. We're looking at about a 500 acre foot need or you know, thereabouts to get us through to June. And then the whole number for wells and the water, city of Napa water, to start over on July 1. But that's the question though, is can we move forward? We won't get up to 800 acre feet by end of this June, but we can certainly start drawing on the 22 million gallons a month. We just had our pumps, our one pump at Rutherford Pump Station worked on this past week because it did burn out. So we had to have it worked on. It's back in place, it's back on. But that's one of the caveats is too that we're running Rutherford Pump Station around the clock. We need to have a backup power source. The $500,000 for 200 additional acre feet was not discussed this evening. But that's the other thing. With the 200 acre foot allocation, we're looking at $2,500 an acre foot per acre foot, which is $500,000 per year. It pushes out the ability to probably move forward on a capital improvement projects, but just so everyone's open on the table, but that it's going to be a additional cost to the city.
Mr. Hall, and then I'll go to Mr. Hardy.
Thank you. I would just say also, I think, Erica, one issue with procuring the water from the city of Napa, I think it'd be nice to have a funding facility agreement with the council. In other words, if I were you, I'd say, hey, council, please authorize up to 100 acre feet purchased. I'm only going to buy the foot as we absolutely need it because it's very expensive. But if we get a little bit of rain, then you back off the purchase. If there's no rain, you're going to have to accelerate the buying. But somehow we manage that just like any other cash account, real nice and tight. And we don't look at this as writing a check for $500,000. We get us through the squeeze here, and who knows if it's actually a squeeze. I think Lester makes a very, very good point. Maybe this is just the way it's going to be. I don't know, but we've got to buy a little bit of time. And if we get a couple of rainstorms between now and April 15th, we need all that water going into the reservoir. So, and if we don't need to buy any more or spend any money, then let's not. But if we do, after April, then basically the council will authorize, or what I'm suggesting anyway, is a framework where the council can simply authorize up to a certain amount, and you and Mark and the rest of the staff work on what is that, and you keep the council abreast of the progress that you're making with the city of Napa.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. Couple of things. With respect to the challenges looming for this coming dry season, it seems to me that one essential step that is missing, or at least that I haven't heard discussed, is projecting what the effect of the phase 2 regulations will be on demand. So we weren't in phase 2 last summer. The whole function of phase 2 is to reduce demand so that we stretch our supply under circumstances like the ones we're facing right now. So, my question for staff would be, is that a report you could bring back at our next council meeting? It would really, and if not then I think we need to know when, because the decisions about purchasing additional water, amongst other things, will ultimately affect our next water rate study. I mean, this is one of the unfortunate and very difficult consequences of drought situations. Our water use rates are based on delivering a certain volume, and when water emergencies require us to reduce that volume, then we have to adjust our rates up, and a lot of assumptions go into that. So a severe drought situation has the potential to generate costs that are then going to have to be allocated forward in our next rate increase. And we already know that our water rates are high, and that for a lot of our residents and other water customers, and I think it's worth remembering that there are a significant number of residential customers outside the city limits who are also affected by our water rates when they go up. It's really important to keep in mind. I don't think we can necessarily avoid those increases, but we certainly want to make decisions with an awareness of them. The other thing, and so whenever Ms. Smithies can, I would appreciate a response to the question about projecting demand under the phase 2 water emergency regulations. With respect to what I am proposing tonight, I'm looking for a comprehensive approach to our policies and planning, which doesn't mean that I'm in any way opposed to the broader interagency and more regional quest that Mayor Ellsworth has suggested. I think long term, that's absolutely essential. And I think some of that, in a very good way, is already built into the work of the Groundwater Sustainability Plan Advisory Committee in terms of what will come out in the Groundwater Sustainability Plan. And it's one of those curious things that Sigma doesn't give the Groundwater Sustainability Agency authority over the larger picture, but it does exhort us to engage with other water users and agencies, even when they're outside the basin over which the GSA has a jurisdiction. So there are a number of things that are in play that I think will create forums, are creating forums where we're going to be interacting with the county and the cities and possibly agencies even outside the county in future planning. But right now, and this year, I really see a need for us to update and overhaul our own policies. And with respect to the safe yield analysis, I'm hoping that we can make some progress towards revisiting those calculations with the likelihood of a reduction in our long-term, a reduction from our long-term average rainfall in mind. And I think there are some, generally accepted, maybe not universally, but there are some generally accepted ideas about, about the direction, the shape that climate change is taking with respect to rainfall in our part of the world. And I think there are resources we can take advantage of in terms of selecting a number to use, but we need to find a value and plug it in and see what it means in terms of this whole collection of policies. So the values we're using right now were created through work that I'm pretty sure involves staff, a consultant, and the members of the Safe Yield Committee. I don't know that we need to create a committee in order to do this work, but that may be something the council chooses to do at some point. But at a minimum, I think we should be thinking about and trying to give Ms. Smithies some idea of what kind of contribution we're looking for in the near term from staff in terms of moving the ball forward in this direction.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you have a few more things here? I'm trying to see.
That's certainly enough for now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So if we can look at perhaps what next steps may be, Mr. Presswich, Ms. Smithies, Mr. Doring and I had been on these water security subcommittee, holding over from the last term. Is that something that we can look at, perhaps a meeting in the next week to look at the procurement issue, and then perhaps the beginning of a design for how we look at looking at the safe yield? I'm just looking at what we can do, recognizing that there's a fast approaching situation that we want to stay ahead of. Mr. Presswich, do you have any thoughts on that?
It might be helpful for me to recap some of our discussion, and I've taken some notes and tried to organize the conversation into what I would call a comprehensive water security plan. And I have a couple of different buckets. One addresses policies. So we've talked about the water neutrality policy. We've talked about a will serve policy. We've introduced revisiting the safe yield calculations with an eye on considering possible reductions in rainfall expectations over time. Policies. There were consistent comments on projects, so that can involve the reservoir study. We've talked about infrastructure improvements, whether it's our own pipe replacement, the purple pipe projects that are coming, upgrades to our system, including pump stations. Obviously, with the projects comes budget and funding considerations, and so that has to be part of this comprehensive water security plan. And it would be helpful for us to either work through the mayor and vice mayor now in the coming days, weeks, in conversations with the city of Napa. It would be helpful to have authority tonight to have conversations for up to 200 additional acre feet, so that we can begin to, we've talked conceptually with the city of Napa about that now. And we intend to continue that conversation as we look through that future forecast. It's dry looking out over 10 days. We're hopeful that changes soon. So in addition to policies and projects, We've talked about sources of water and evaluating sources of additional water. That's part of the Napa conversation. And we've heard other conversations about other potential nearby sources that we might look for partnership on. And then finally, under this comprehensive water security framework would be what I call it at the moment, a communication or analysis focus, where that includes looking at the phase 2 impacts on demand that you're looking for information on as early as our next council meeting. Concepts on how we communicate with our community, working together through some form of a thermometer, tracking our progress on water conservation, which is so critical now as we look forward with uncertainty on the water. And we haven't talked about this, but as we, over the next several weeks, we'll be refining this framework for penalties that would be placed on customers that are using more than their designated allocation under the phase 2 water emergency. So that will require additional communication and continued analysis to be sure that that information is accurate. So this is, I think, a really helpful starting point, and I want to make sure that the way I've framed this is, I think, representative of our conversation tonight. It probably would be helpful to receive some feedback either tonight on authority to purchase, and our interest is in advancing that conversation in the coming couple of weeks. And if you would like to put a cap on that, our conversation has been in the range of up to 200 acre feet, recognizing that we're not trending well at the moment. And if things don't change, that's going to be a source of water that would be very helpful for us.
I think that getting that teed up would be important. I think Mr. Hall made some good suggestions about how to perhaps stage it so it's not an all at once thing, but whatever that conversation looks like. So I think, I'm seeing Ms. Chateau here with a hand up.
I was just going to thank our city manager. I think you captured it wonderfully. And I would say let's move forward with giving you the authority of having going up to the 200 acres feet as needed.
And we have consensus here on the council. Certainly I support that. And it looks like that's what you need to hear so that you can be, move forward with those conversations. And then is there a way, and if the vice mayor is open to perhaps finding a meeting next week to sort of see if we can touch base to make sure that we're on track with looking at what we want to look at. Mr. Prestwich, would that work?
That's
Okay.
fine. At some point, I'd like to see the contract and the terms of the contract and make sure that what we do is in compliance with the contract with Napa, rather than sort of this willy-nilly approach. You kind of want to look at the contract first, see what the parameters are, see what the notice triggers are. I'm sure our city attorney would like to do that, take a look at that. Did you capture, Mark, in your summary, the comparison of actual use with projected use with projects that have been approved for the last many years? That's been something near and dear to my heart that I've been asking to do, and Council Member Hardy has brought that up again. And by the way, I agree with Mr. Hardy's sense that we need to focus in on our policies, in particular our safe yield policy and other policies. But did you capture that also? Because I think that is an important, that may go under the category of water neutrality policy, but I want to make sure we understand that that's important too.
I didn't have it in a bullet right now, but it's a great bullet to add. And I think what comes with that is also a focus on what tools. So we've talked about additional monitoring, and as that additional data is secured, it helps us. And as we change policies and evolve policies, those policies allow for more ability for the city. It allows the city more ability to confirm actual and document actual water usage over time, which under the current water neutrality policies is really not available to us. But as additional tools become, or as we modify the water neutrality policies and allow for additional ways to secure water neutrality. For example, expanding that to include outdoor landscaping improvements, xeriscaping, et cetera. That will allow us to identify before and after usage and really document the projected use versus the actual use. So I will capture that under this outline.
Okay. So with that, if there are no further comments, and then we'll plan to circle back in, the vice mayor and I with the city manager next week to make sure we've sort of captured everything and everything's moving on track, and then sort of reviewing the contract with Napa, but knowing that having the staff understand, knowing that they have the council support in working forwards towards procurement of those additional acre feet. So with that, Mr. Presswitch, you feel you have everything we need to move on? Very good. And this is a challenging conversation, but few things are more critical. So thank you very much, everybody, for the input. And we'll move on now to our public hearings. Item 9.1, we'll go backwards here and start with this is 9.1, public hearing for the consideration of potential programs for inclusion in the state community development block grant coronavirus aid relief and economic security CARES Act CDBG CV2 and CV3 applications, and the potential approval of a resolution approving an application for funding and the execution of a grant agreement and any agreements thereto from the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Response Round 2 and 3. This is CDBG-CV2 and CV3 NOFA dated December 18th, 2020. And B, potential approval of a resolution approving an amendment to the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Program Coronavirus Response Round 1 CDBG-CV1 Standard Agreement to add additional funds from the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Program, Coronavirus Response Round 2 and 3 NOFA dated December 18th, 2020. And this is prepared by Mandy Kellogg, our finance manager.
Thank you. Good evening. On December 18th, the California Department of Housing and Community Development, also known as HCD, released additional funding through the CARES Act for local assistance in response to the pandemic. The total allocation available to the city through rounds 2 and 3 is $271,053, which is limited to community development and economic development activities that provide support or services in response to COVID-19 impacts. In September 2020, the city applied for funds through round 1 for a child care scholarship program in the amount of $74,484. The city was notified on February 5th that our application was approved and that the standard agreement is in the process of being signed by the director of HCD. The city will be partnering with Community Resources for Children to manage this program. In addition to being able to apply for new activities under the new funding, HCD is also allowing entities to amend their standard agreements for round 1 to include available funding from rounds 2 and 3. Since the relief of the NOFA in December, HCD has made some amendments. They will be excluding rental assistance from the eligible activities in response to the anticipated rollout of the statewide emergency rental assistance program. This change was necessary to ensure that there is not a duplication of benefits in the funded programs, which is required of CDBG. In response to this change, they've also extended the application deadline to May 7th. After reviewing the criteria, staff is proposing submitting an application for utility assistance program in the amount of $200,000. The city would partner with Up Valley Family Centers to manage the program. We would be able to offer assistance for electricity, garbage, water and wastewater, as well as broadband expenses for up to 3 consecutive months. Staff is also proposing amending the standard agreement for the Child Care Scholarship Program to include an additional $71,053 to support this program. This concludes my brief overview of the staff report, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any initial questions or comments from the council? Okay, and so in terms of clarification, the recommendation is to adopt what's already sort of been looked through.
That's correct. If you agree with the programs that we've put forward, we'd like to adopt the resolution as is.
Okay. I'm seeing Ms. Chateau with a hand up.
I would. I think that these programs are fantastic. I'm absolutely in support of moving forward with them. I had one question about the utility assistance. When you just talked about broadband, I wondered if there's any way to apply for ongoing funding to be able to provide that in the future, just knowing that there's such a divide with technology for people in our community being able to access everything right now, online, but even in the future, it's just something that rural communities struggle with. And I know even in St. Helena, it can be difficult and really expensive for people as it becomes just the costs keep going up with everything. So is this a short-term thing, or is there a potential for it to be long-term as well?
It could be longer term. We aren't actually limited to the 3 months, but the problem is that if you exceed the 3 months, it triggers a lead-based paint inspection, which could be very costly for the city to be able to conduct. So that's part of the reason why we put the parameter of the 3 months. HCD recognizes that that limitation on the program is not a good one, but unfortunately, when they rolled this program out, they didn't take that into consideration. They are continuously evaluating it, so there is a hope that they will release that criteria.
Okay. So if they release it, then it could be for longer.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And do they know that that's something that we would like to do?
Yes.
Okay, great.
We had a webinar last week, and there was several entities on there that expressed their concern about the limitation of the 3 months.
Great, thank you. So I'm gonna, if I'm not seeing any other council question or comment at this point, I'll open the public comment and ask our city clerk if she's seeing any public comment.
There is a hand raised. Erica, you should be able to unmute yourself and address the city council.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. My name is Erica Lubensky. I'm the Executive Director of Community Resources for Children. And I wanted just to give you a brief of the childcare situation in our community and give you a little sense of what we're looking at. As you have heard in the recent months, childcare is essential for the economy to rebound. While some of us are privileged to work from home, there's many people, especially low-income families and essential workers in our community, who are not working from home. These are our nurses on the front lines, fathers, mothers working in the wineries, the people who are bagging our groceries when we go to the store. Many are parents of young children, and they are the ones that are serving food at the restaurants we're fighting so much to keep open. During this pandemic, childcare providers have been caring for children of essential workers since the beginning. Day after day, these businesses have opened their doors so that essential workers can report to work. The childcare crisis is just recently making it to the headlines, but it has been building up for years. These are some facts about childcare in our community. Childcare businesses are small businesses, often run by women of color. Childcare really never recovered as a field from the 2008 recession. The cost of full-time childcare is higher than paying a year in college. People working in childcare, they themselves are unable to make their basic needs. Their entry wage is $12 an hour. There's only one licensed childcare slot for every 4 children who are looking for care. In the city of St. Helena, we have 305 slots across 10 private centers and home-based childcare businesses, but the demand is much higher than that. With COVID-19, running a childcare business has become unsustainable because of reduced enrollment due to physical distancing, increased staffing to maintain stable groups, increased costs due to sanitation and cleaning supplies. Napa County and the city of St. Helena especially, because childcare is already so scarce, cannot afford to lose more childcare slots. Recent data shows that in California, 30% of the slots have not come back. And we are seeing in the county of Napa about a 7% permanent closure already of slots. It remains to be seen how much bigger the number gets. This is really why the childcare sector and the families needing the care need more investment. CRC recently disbursed $1 million in small business grants to private childcare businesses across Napa County. $138,000 went to 8 childcare providers in the city of St. Helena who combined care for 281 children. In addition to that, we currently have 428 children receiving scholarships. This money comes mostly from the state of California. 13 of those children live in the city of St. Helena and use childcare in St. Helena. Another 8 children live somewhere else, but they work in the city of St. Helena and use childcare in the city of St. Helena. Yet, even with all this help, childcare businesses are struggling, and they're struggling to cover payroll, and they need more support. Families who have recently seen their wages and their hours cut cannot afford childcare. So we really appreciate the investment that the city of St. Helena has already committed to childcare scholarships, and we would be honored to serve even more families with additional funds. These funds will enable parents to go to work and childcare providers in the city of St. Helena to stay afloat. Thank you so much for your consideration and for your support to working families in our community.
Thank you very much for the comments. Ms. Shafopoulos, are we seeing any more public comment?
I am seeing no other hands raised.
Okay, well, I'll bring it back to the council. I'm certainly supportive of this critical support for this sector that's so important to keeping our community together here and looking after our next generations. Are there any other council comments or questions or a motion to move forward on this? I'm seeing no hands up. Is there a motion? I'm seeing Mr. Doring.
Just one question with respect to the utilities. As we'll find out later with our budget updates, we're having an issue with folks who are not able to pay their water bills. And it would be important for me, if we were to be granted this extra $200,000, to be able to try to prioritize those uses in conjunction with the good work of the Up Valley Family Center. Is that something that we could arrange so that we can get a better sense of what those bills are at that point, assuming that we qualify for this grant, so that we can get a better sense of how we target those funds?
Yes, I actually talked to Jenny O'Cone from Up Valley Family Center already, and she has a number of families that she's been serving with rental assistance that she knows would also be qualified for this program for both the City of St. Helena utilities as well as their PG&E and garbage and broadband. She has identified anywhere from 100 to 150 eligible candidates for this program.
Thank you.
And Ms. Chateau.
I will move approval of the recommended action.
And do we have a second?
Second.
And roll call, please.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Thank you. So
Mayor,
we'll
would it
move.
be a good time to take a 5-minute break at 8
Yeah,
o'clock?
certainly. Yeah, let's do that. Do you want 10 minutes, Mr. Doring?
10 is fine.
Let's do a
Thank you.
10-minute break and we'll be back at 8:10. Thank you.
No music.
Okay, I think folks will start coming back here. Seeing folks jumping on here.
Just wanted to let everyone know I am unable to start my video. I get a screen that says the host has stopped it.
Sandy, is there anything we can do on that from our end? Oh, here you go.
Yeah, I just requested Lester. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we've got, let's see if we've got everybody here. I think we've got everybody back. So we'll get moving. We've got a lot of business left, so we'll try to keep this moving along briskly. We want to stay focused and make our good deliberations and decisions, but just have to be a little conscious of the time here. So we're going to move now into item, this is 9.2, and this is the discussion of potential activities and projects for inclusion in the 2021 Community Development Block Grant CDBG applications and consideration of approval of a resolution approving 1, applications for funding, and 2, the execution of a grant agreement and any amendments thereto from the 2020-2021 funding year of the CDBG program. And again, this is Ms. Kellogg, our finance manager.
Thank you. This public hearing is a continuation of the public hearing we held on December 8th in anticipation of the CDBG NOFA being released in January for the 2021 funding year. During that meeting, City Council discussed the possibility of applying for planning and technical assistance, public services for a mental health program for youth, and also reapplying for the Christine Apartments acquisition project, as well as the Hunts Grove parking lot. Since the public hearing in December, the city received information from HCD regarding 3 pending applications from the 2019-20 funding cycle. The first was the economic development application for business assistance. The city was informed that in order to develop a viable program, they would need to complete a market analysis, and it was highly recommended that the city have this conducted by a consultant that is experienced with these types of programs. HCD recommended that the city withdraw their application and resubmit under the 2021 funding cycle to allow for ample time to complete the study. Staff agreed with the recommendation provided in order to ensure that development of a successful program was created. In addition, the city was informed that the Christine Apartments and Hunts Grove parking lot project applications would not need to be resubmitted. They are currently on a waiting list to fund down as funds become available. Staff has also had subsequent conversations with HCD regarding the Christine Apartments project and is currently working with HCD to move forward on this project. I also wanted to comment that in the staff report, it mentioned that there was an agreement that was extended through 2020. We have further extended this agreement through 2021. Based on the December 8th public hearing, subsequent information collected, and new criteria outlined in the 2021 NOFA, staff is making the following recommendations for application submittals. The first would be for planning and technical assistance for up to $250,000. The second will be for public services for a mental health program for youth up to $500,000. The city has identified an organization that would like to partner with the city in developing and managing the program. The third would be to reapply for an economic development business assistance program for up to $500,000. Staff has been in contact with a consultant that was highly recommended for developing and managing these programs and has the capacity to assist the city with the application and program requirements. This concludes my brief overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any initial questions, comments from council before I open the public comment? I am seeing, I just want to see if I see Mr. Hardy, make sure he's on the screen. I'm seeing Mr. Doring.
Yeah, I'm not really adept at the hand raising, but I'll get to it. With respect to the housing rehabilitation program that was not awarded for $300,000, can you describe why that was not awarded?
Yes, with that application, it was actually a new system that HCD put together for applying for their programs, and it required uploading multiple documents. The Napa Housing Authority actually assisted us with this application and submitted it on our behalf. And when they uploaded one of the documents, it replaced another required document. And so it was actually denied for not having all the documents required for the application. But I would also like to mention that we did get funded for the home grant in the amount of $500,000, which offers the same services that that program would have offered.
Okay. I'm actually supportive of the recommendation as you laid it out, but I would ask our city council to maybe consider in the future when we look at housing rehabilitation, and I don't know if this falls within this category, but the ability to help assist folks who have mains but don't have the laterals on the sewer connections. I'm thinking, for example, of the El Bonita neighborhood. Magnolia Oaks had to install a main, but most of those folks are not connected. And I was thinking, hey, that might be a way. I don't know if that falls in the category of housing rehabilitation, but to me, it's a public safety issue and frankly, a financial issue for the city. So maybe in the next application for the next time, that would be something to consider. So I'm just throwing that out there for some food for thought. Do you, switching gears a little bit on the mental health aspect of this program, who is the identified mental health partner?
I hope I'm saying this correctly, and Anna can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Aldea.
Aldea.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Aldea. Thank you. Great.
Thank you. And I'm certainly very supportive of Vice Mayor Doring's suggestion about looking into the sewer connections in the next round of this. I think that would be a real benefit, both to the community and also to the city, getting folks onto that sanitary sewer. Any other comments or questions before I open the public comment? Seeing none, I will go to public comment. I'll see with Ms. Jafopoulos if we have any public comment.
There are no raised hands.
Very well. I'll close public comment, bring it back. I'm supportive of this moving forward. Are there any other council comments or questions before we go to a motion? I'm seeing Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, Aldea, is that youth mental health services?
I believe that they offer a variety of mental health services, but this program was looking at specifically targeting youth. We could potentially write the application. It's not limited to just youth, so we could potentially write it to open it up. But I know that the initial recommendation from the council at the December 8th meeting was for the youth, especially due to the impacts from COVID.
I see. Thank you.
Ms. Chateau?
Thank you very much. Ms. Kellogg, was it also for the caregivers of youth? We had a lot of conversations with different groups, but I wanted to clarify that with this program. So also their families and the caregivers?
Yes. Yes, that is correct.
Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Shoto, for commenting that. I guess that's kind of what I was getting at. So many times we focus on the individual who is suffering, and in reality, there's a whole network of family and friends and community that is also suffering as a result. So many of whom also need help in recognizing their role in some cases in furthering the mental health issue. So if we can loosen up that definition so it's the whole community of mental health, that would be great, I think.
Ms. Chateau?
Thank you. So that was the whole reason behind this. It was when I went through the first 5 training, and I'm part of that leader network now. They did identify that need and the gap with services for families and caregivers. And we know that the young kids thrive when the parents, or it could be grandparents, that's why I say caregivers, whoever that person is, when they get support and services. A great example is through our public schools. They do an incredible job with the mental health component for our kids in the schools. And it can be challenging always to reach all of the caregivers around that student.
So is there a way in terms of writing this that identifies the youth and then the support system around the youth? Is there a way to Mandy, a way to look at this?
Absolutely. The way that the resolution is written into, it just specifies mental health services. So it doesn't prohibit us from being able to identify as Anna described.
Okay. So if that is satisfactory to the group, I would entertain a motion. Anna, do I see your hand up, Mr. Toe, if you have?
It would just be my pleasure to move forward with a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
I'll second.
And we'll do a roll call, please.
Counselor Chateau,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Thank you. So now we'll move on. We'll get to item 9.3, and this is introduction and first reading of an ordinance amending and restating St. Helena Municipal Code, Chapter 17.164, Design Review, modifying the requirements and process for design review primarily as applied to single-family residential projects, proposing to eliminate the requirement for design review for outdoor seating identified in SHMC Section 17.48.090 and 17.52.090, and proposing to eliminate the requirement for design review for the installation of awnings and canopies as identified in SHMC Section 17.112.070 citywide. And this is Mr. Heacock, our senior planner. Will you take us into this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will try to be brief. As noted in the written staff report, at council direction, this code amendment was brought before the Planning Commission and City Council in 2018, where it was unanimously approved. However, it included a provision that it would expire after 2 years, and that was on November 8th, 2020, unless made permanent by action of the council. The sunset clause was included in order to give the council time to evaluate the effectiveness of the changes and whether or not they would result in any unforeseen consequences. It is staff's opinion that the amendments created by this ordinance have been effective in streamlining the approval of minor residential remodels and additions to the great satisfaction of residents. No unforeseen problems or negative public reaction have occurred as a result of these amendments to staff's knowledge. As such, the same code amendments are being brought back to the council without an expiration date to make them permanent until the comprehensive zoning code update is complete. This item was brought to the Planning Commission on February 2nd, 2021, where the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend that the council approve the amendments. Some highlights of the code amendments include eliminating the need for design review approval for residential accessory buildings, things like sheds and trellises, eliminating the need for design review for exterior alterations or modifications or additions to existing non-historic single-family homes, new homes, and the addition of a second story where one currently doesn't exist would still require design review. It also eliminates the need for design review for outdoor seatings, awnings, and canopies in the central business and service commercial districts in favor of an administrative process. Design review, as it existed and currently exists, would still apply to commercial and historic structures. With that, it is staff's recommendation that the City Council determine that the project or the amendments are exempt from the requirements of CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15301, 15302, and 15303, and introduced and conduct a first reading by title only and waive further reading of an ordinance amending and restating chapter 17164 and section 1748090 C6, Section 1752.090 D6 and 17.112.050B and 17.112.070 of the St. Helena Municipal Code. And I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Heacock. Any initial questions or comments from council? Okay, seeing none, I will move now to our public comment. I'll ask our city clerk if we have any public comment coming in.
There are no hands raised.
Time.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. Close public comment, bring it back to the council. My just comment I want to
Can you
make,
hear
I
me
think
now?
this is a, yes, who are you looking for? Is somebody speaking? No, okay. I think this is a great example of test driving. You know, we made some changes and this is a way of seeing how they worked and having the staff look at it and coming back with a positive report. This is a way of circling back to see how this worked and with this positive report. If there's any additional council comment or question, if not, I'll entertain a motion to move the recommended action.
I apologize, you guys. I froze. I don't know if my whole report was got through or not. I appear to be
okay.
having Wi-Fi issues.
Okay, I think you did complete. So do we have any other council comment or question? And is there a motion?
I'd be happy to make the motion, but I don't quite understand what reading the ordinance by title only means here. I'm not finding the right title obvious in the staff report.
Mr. Walsh, could you perhaps help us navigate a little bit here?
So what you can do here is you could make a motion to, well, you can read it by title only, or you could make a motion to waive the reading by title only and move forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I move that we waive the reading by title only and adopt the ordinance.
Second.
And if we could have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Chateau,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Heacock, for the presentation. And we will move now to item, where are we? Item 10.1 under old business. This is fiscal year 2021 or 2020-21 second quarter finance report and consideration of resolution approving mid-year budget adjustments for fiscal year 2020-21. And this is from Dr. Mitz, our finance director.
Great, thank you very much. So as Mayor Ellsworth has stated, this is your Q2 budget report for fiscal year 21. So here we have an overview of our revenues for the general fund. So on the right or the left-hand side, you can see where we have the adopted budget and the adjusted budget, which are both the same in all revenue categories at this point. We have our Q2 collected, and then we have our percentage of budget collected. So we have these categorized in property sales, TOT, and other revenues. Property sales and TOT typically account for 89% of your general fund revenues. However, in the year of COVID, it's closer to 79 or 80%. But you can see property tax, we've collected 57% so far. Sales tax is 76%, TOT is 45%, other revenue is 25%. So at this point, we have collected 53% of our total revenues. We are tracking a little higher than what we initially anticipated in the sales tax, but again, with what's going on with COVID, we still are glad that we've maintained very conservative posture there. TOT did decline in December and then part of the way through January because of the second shelter at home orders. And then property tax, we do have a one-time revenue boost for ERAF funds that we did receive. That is something that we normally receive it every year, but we cannot count on it because there's no guarantee that we're actually going to get those funds. So we do have several general fund revenue increase recommendations. So you'll see the top 3 lines have to do with property taxes. So the property tax secured and unsecured, those increases are based off of the actual projections from the county. What we do is in formulating the budget, we project what we anticipate it's going to be, but we don't actually find out from the county what the numbers are until August. And likewise, that ERAF shift to state, that is the one line item, which is the city just does not budget for it just because we don't know if we're going to receive it or not. And we got notification, it was around October, that we're going to receive almost $401,000 for ERAF. The other largest revenue increase recommendation is the emergency relief of $2.5 million. So this is a combination of funding that we'll receive for strike team reimbursements that our fire department goes on, reimbursements from the LNU fire, and reimbursements for the glass fire. Right now, our total reimbursements for the glass fire, the total costs are still unknown, so there might be some fluctuations. And this emergency relief number of $2.5 million, it assumes a 93.75% reimbursement rate for the total expenses that we are claiming with FEMA. The next item is building permits. We are recommending an increase of $100,000 because the activity for building permits has been higher than what we had initially anticipated. The next item is $160,000 for the contributions from government, and this is specifically for the SB planning grant that we've already received, but the revenues are received on a reimbursable basis, so we did not actually include it in our revenue projections for the fiscal year adopted budget. And then the last item is actually a revenue decrease for recreation registration of $50,000. This year we anticipated we would have brought in $120,000, but with the continued shelter at home orders, with COVID, trying to return back to normal in some of this programming, we did lose revenues that we were expecting during the first part of the year. So overall, our revenue increase recommendations totals $3.3 million for the general fund. On the flip side of that, we have our overview of our expenses for the general fund, and these are the expenses broken down by department. For this particular chart, you'll see your blue is the adopted, your orange is the adjusted, and then your gray is your year-to-date spent through December 31st. One of the things I do really want to point out is in non-departmental, you have this negative 11%, and in fire, you have 7%. The fire department is specifically related to the use of strike teams, and then the salaries that we pay out for our fire department staff to go out on these strike teams, which we do get reimbursed for. And the other large expenditure for the non-department where you see the negative number, that is specifically due to the glass fire and LNU fire expenses as well as COVID expenses. So things that were not budgeted, we do have separate line items in our non-department here. So that's why that's attributed to the negative 11%. For expense increase recommendations, because we have such high expenses related to emergencies, I broke this down into 2 separate categories to try to make it a little easier to see what might be the normal expenses versus very abnormal expenses, which is going to be your emergencies down here. The first expense for non-departmental, we're recommending just holding aside $400,000 just to have any types of improvements or any unanticipated expenses that we might come across in the next 6 months. The other $100,000 for non-departmental, that is for COVID-related items. City Council, and I apologize, I'm looking for my notes over on my expenses. For the city council, it was the additional $10,000 for additional funding related to diversity and inclusion awareness training that we've already started with the city council at the community. The administration, it was $31,000 increase, and that recommendation is based off of the initial fiscal year adopted budget did not include translation services for our meetings, and so this is to account for those translation services. HR and IT, you'll see an increase of $8,300, and this is over 3 different funds. So it's in the general fund, the water fund, and the wastewater, and that is for an anticipated cost for executive director recruitment for Erica. The police department, the increase was $17,000, was based on outfitting a donated K9 vehicle. Earlier this year, our K9 vehicle was involved in a car accident, and the county of Napa graciously donated one of their vehicles they weren't using. So this was to cover the cost of outfitting it. These costs are being reimbursed from our insurance agency, as well as we're getting funds to be able to purchase another vehicle in the next year. And then the last item in our just general operating expenses is an increase for government buildings of $9,800, and that was for an unanticipated HVAC repair for the fire station. Unfortunately, they had 2 unexpected repairs within a year's worth of time. The first repair, the fire department budget could cover it, and this one, unfortunately, we are going for an increase. And then the other items as stated below are directly related to either the PSPS events, the LNU fire, or the glass fire. So the subtotal for the expense increases is almost $2.7 million for emergencies, for a total general fund expense adjustment of $3.26 million.
Wait, I'm
One
sorry.
of the items.
April, could you go back just for a moment? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the line, the non-department line of $2,019,462.
Yes.
And that is related to.
That would be COVID-related expenses, LNU fire expenses, as well as glass fire expenses that we've paid out to date. It is definitely not everything that has been billed because we have not been billed, but that's what we've actually been paid out to date.
Okay.
And the next slide is a quick overview of expenses from the general fund. So there were 4 particular items. So prior to our mid-year report, there were 4 separate items taken to City Council for use of general fund reserves from after the budget adoption until now. So just to give an overall idea, that these are approved budget adjustments and use of reserves since July 1st, and they total $533,000. The very first item is the sewer lateral loan program. This is a not to exceed amount, and that's assuming everybody who qualifies for that program apply for the program and use 100% of the funding that we're making available for it. And so I wanted to just give council and the public an overview of what's been done up until this point as far as budget adjustments. Our general fund estimated net position. So the very top line, our estimated net position at the beginning of this fiscal year was $7.1 million. Our estimated revenues, and all of the revenues and expenses in this category include what our recommendations are tonight, is about $14.7 million for revenues. Our expenses are now at $16.9 million. Again, know that over $2 million of that is for emergency related items that we are seeking reimbursements. Purchase order rollovers. These are purchase orders where the funds were budgeted last fiscal year, but they were not fully spent, and so it gets rolled over into the next fiscal year. And so overall, this is a total use of reserves of 2.6, almost $2.7 million, which leaves our estimated unassigned net position for the end of the fiscal year at June 30th, 2021, of $4.46 million, which leaves our net position at 26%. City Council's directed goal for the net position for the general fund is 30%. But again, it's important to note that we have the 30% set to try to offset anything that is unanticipated. And this year, we know right from the very start of fiscal year 21, we were using $1.75 million worth of reserves. So before I move on to the water fund, I want to see if anybody has any questions on the general fund.
Are there any questions from council, comments on the general fund? I just have one comment. I think I just want to compliment our council and our staff going through this remarkable year and to find ourselves with 26% reserve, which is not our target, but is still a strong number considering what we've been through. The foresight of the staff, the focus of the council in managing our financial situation through a situation beyond belief. I just want to point out and say thank you to everybody for that kind of focus to keep us in that sort of stable position. So with that, if there's no other council comment or question, we can move on to the water funds.
Okay, thank you very much. So the water fund, for the revenues, the adopted budget is 6.8 million, the adjusted is 6.8, and then through Q2, which is anything that had been billed through December 31st, it was 2.8 million, which is 42%. But what I did is I added some additional information in the staff report at the bottom here. Because we've shifted over to a bi-monthly billing cycle, this number shows much lower than what we would normally do. So since the billing for our November and December water, and then you'll see the same thing in the wastewater side, since the billing for November and December did not get sent out until about the 15th of January, what I did is I included these numbers in here. So you see where we're actually trending is 3.74 million, which is at 55% collected, which is on trend. For the water fund expenses, so again, you'll see your adopted, your adjusted, your year-to-date spent, and then also the total expenses does include your rollovers for purchase orders. So here you have where non-department is at 25%, council's at 57%, admin, finance, attorney, and public works. So everything's looking pretty good in this area. There are a couple of budget increases that we are making recommendations to. It's primarily in non-department, public works, and attorney. Or I'm sorry, HRIT, water and attorney. So the first budget recommendation increase, again, it's the same as the general fund, so it's for the recruitment for the director position. The water distribution is $40,000, and that is directly tied to expenses related to PSPS events, the LNU fire, as well as the glass fire. And then the attorney's costs, they were much higher than we anticipated for the water fund, and so we are making a recommendation for a $25,000 increase. So total budget increase recommendations for the water fund is $75,000. So our water fund estimated balance reserve. So again, we have our $5.2 million. We have our new estimated revenues, estimated expenses, rollovers. It is important to notice that this budget does include $540,000 that's being transferred over to CIP projects for the water side. Use of reserves of $96,000. Leaving an estimated unassigned net position of 4.9 million, which is at 71%. That is above the council's target, but we also know we have several CIP projects that are in the works right now that we will be utilizing some of this cash balance and transferring it to the CIP fund in the future. So on the water side, I will stop to see if there's any questions.
Any questions, comments from council here? Seeing none, we'll move forward. And I'll open it at the end to public comment at the end of the next section.
Great, thank you. So now onto the wastewater fund. So the same scenario with the wastewater fund. So you see our adopted is 3.3, adjusted is 3.3. Through December 31st, we've collected 1.1 or 34%. But when you actually take into account the November and December billing, we're actually at 51%. So we are on track for our revenues. For the wastewater fund expenses, again, the non-department, that's a little bit lower, but it's also due to, and I forgot to mention this on the water side, it's also due to the PERS unfunded liability, paying it off in the 15-year clip, and that's done at the very front part of the year. There were only a few recommendations on the wastewater fund. Again, it's the HR slide for the recruitment. The water treatment plant, both of the expenditures as well as the wastewater collections. I'm getting lost in my notes here. My apologies. So the three of these are due to increased staffing time for overtime as well as standby during the LNU, PSPS, and glass fire events. So that is the exact same as the water side. The recommended increase is $21,000, almost $22,000. For the net position, where this is going to leave us, we start out at 4.1 million with our revenues and expenses. We're ending at 4.17 million, which is 170 or 152% of our net position. But that also includes that $1.15 million of a settlement agreement that will be transferred over to CIP. And the other thing that's important to note with the CIP projects, the largest, and I apologize, I should say wastewater up here. The largest CIP project for wastewater right now is the wastewater treatment plant, which we'll talk about in a subsequent report. And so some of this fund balance has been building over here because we have yet to take out debt. And so that is cash funding that we can put towards the project eventually. So our water wastewater aging comparison, just because when we bill for water wastewater, that's when we actually recognize the revenues. It's not when we actually receive them. So this is something new we started with COVID, is just to be able to see how much our increase is in our longer term aging comparison from the same point last year. I'll just wrap this into wastewater because it's one quick little slide. We are asking for budget adjustment expenses in one other fund, and that's the garage fund. And there's two particular items. The first item is for $5,000, and that was for increased fuel costs during the PSPS, LNU fire, and glass fire events, as well as the $20,000, which was for unanticipated costly expenses that we had on some of our vehicles. So with that, I will stop there and see if anyone has any questions on the wastewater side or the other funds.
Any council, seeing Mr. Hall?
Thank you, April. That's terrific. I was just a quick question. You showed aged receivables on wastewater. I was wondering if you have a similar view of significant aged receivables for the general fund.
We don't have it for the general fund because we typically don't have aged receivables on the general fund. Okay. For the utility fund, this is water, wastewater combined. So this is where we see our our aged receivables.
Okay, so, okay, well, maybe you're in the office tomorrow?
I am not, but I can look into it.
Okay, thank you. I will, I'll send you a text.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other council comments, questions? So on the aged receivables, is that we're seeing the difference this year due to COVID and the impact on the fund from community, some folks not being able to keep up with that billing. Is that correct?
We have no way of knowing exactly why it's showing that trend, but that is our best estimate of what's happening. It could be a combination between right before COVID hit, we went to the bi-monthly billing transition. So I think people were starting to get used to that. And then right during our first bi-monthly bill is when COVID hit. So I feel like it's compounding. So it's something we're closely watching on the utility for the utility funds.
Okay, very good. So if I don't see any other council, I'm seeing Mr. Doring.
April, just one statement that you made that causes me some concern, and that is expenses due to the fires that, bills have not come in yet. And so you said, well, there's going to be more coming, but it doesn't seem like we're building that into this mid-year budget adjustment. Or are we? Are we projecting, do we have an estimate at least of what those additional costs could be so that we kind of know what our expenses are? Or are we going to have to come back soon and make another adjustment when those expenses come in?
Yeah, I can't actually, I do have the numbers. Let me just look it up really fast for what we have. Maybe I couldn't look it up as fast as I thought I could.
don't necessarily need an answer tonight, but I think we need to at least track that and have a sense of what our true expenses are, or at least give a good estimate based on our contracts that are outstanding.
Yeah, and the combination for some of the departments, and a lot, we were really careful this year with the mid-year budget. Typically, we'll go line item by line item with all the different department heads, but this year what we really tried to do is look to see where we might have had savings and internally move money between different departments, all within the same fund, to just bring the big items to council. And my apologies, Paul, that I just verified my spreadsheet that I have for the expenditures for at least all of the contracts we have. So that $2 million for expenditures, that is everything that we know of to date. So my apologies. Thank you for having me look that up.
Thank you.
Okay, if any other council comments, questions, I'm going to open it to public comment, and I'll check in with Ms. Shafopoulos, see if there's any public comment.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, so with that, I'll bring it back to the council. We'll close public comment. The recommended action here is that we approve a resolution approving the mid-year budget adjustments. Are there any other council comments or questions? If not, I will entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
I'll second.
And a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hardy,
Yes.
Chateau,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. And again, thank you to the finance department. Incredible work this year. And with this financial, the ability to keep this type of stability as we move through these challenging times. So thank you very much. We have two more items that we want to get through. It's 8:51. Do we want to extend now, Cindy, or should we try to get through an item first?
It's completely up to you.
Okay, I think we should see if we can extend 15 minutes now and do the vote now. That'll allow us to hopefully get through these two. Do we need
I need a motion and a majority vote.
Move to extend for 15 minutes.
Second.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilor Hall,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Chateau,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Okay, now we'll move on to item 10.2, and this is consideration and proposed adoption of the following. One, resolution adopting the CEQA mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the wastewater treatment and reclamation plant Phase 1 upgrade CIP project number S-52. And 2, resolution approving the plans and specifications for the wastewater treatment and reclamation plant Phase 1 upgrades CIP project number S-52 and authorizing advertisement for bids. And this is Ms. Smithies, our Public Works Director and City Engineer.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. Yes, tonight we have before you the anticipated CEQA mitigated negative declaration for adoption and approval of the plans and specifications, so we may go out and proceed with advertisement. I have Curtis Lamb, the lead project engineer, project manager with Hydroscience, here to present hopefully a concise PowerPoint and discuss where we started, what we're planning on doing. I don't know if it's a financial overview. We do have Director Moritz can provide some more feedback on the financial delivery of this project. We also have analytical environmental sciences to address any technical questions you may have with the environmental study that was completed. There was NEPA and CEQA on this project because we're seeking USDA financing on this project. So we had to meet both CEQA and NEPA environmental. So with that, I'll let Curtis Lamb take the lead.
Thank you very much, Erica. Do you guys prefer if I share my screen, or would you like?
Certainly.
Would you like to? All right.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to be talking about the wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation project. There are multiple components. Go ahead, you can move to the next slide. There are multiple components to the project. There's the wastewater treatment plant design and construction. There's the CEQA and NEPA document that AES prepared that was recently distributed for public review. And the execution of this project will allow the city to implement a recycle water project in the future. And I'll try to touch briefly on all of those items. And if you have any questions, feel free to jump in and ask any questions at any time or afterwards. It's up to you. Next slide, please. So right now, your wastewater treatment plant uses these 6 ponds to provide secondary treatment of wastewater that's generated by the city's collection system. This wastewater is discharged to the Napa River or reused in spray fields immediately to the south of the plant. What we're proposing to do is basically convert these ponds to be used for flow equalization and preliminary treatment of wastewater. And so they wouldn't be required to treat your wastewater going forward. What we would do is we would put a wastewater treatment plant essentially near the entrance to your plant. This would be a packaged wastewater treatment plant. And that facility would basically provide primary, secondary, and tertiary treatment. The ponds on the west and north side of your plant, ponds 1A, 1B, 2, and 3, would be used for flow equalization. And then pond 5 and pond 4 would essentially be used for recycled water storage going forward. And so some of the improvements to the plant include adding a core screen before any sewage goes into the ponds, pumping out of pond 1A to your new membrane bioreactor plant. And most importantly, I just want to highlight that this project allows the city to basically comply with your cease and desist order and new NPDES permit requirements. So the successful execution of this project will basically get the city out of that limitation and allow you to add new connections in the future. Next slide. The MBR is shown here. This is like a zoom in picture of the slide before. The packaged membrane bioreactor will be located essentially near the plant entrance, between the plant entrance and the existing influent pump station. The existing influent pump station will be basically modifying creating a new pump station to pump out of pond 1A, and will pump directly to the west into the new packaged MBR unit. This land is currently underutilized right now. It's used for storage of various materials. And so we're basically maximizing and utilizing sort of land that's relatively unused at the moment. Other components of the project will include new electrical service, new transformer. We are envisioning that the contractor who builds this project will use a new operation, will use a trailer for their office and leave that trailer for staff to use going forward. Currently, staff, their office is basically co-located with the influent pump station and the laboratory, and having a separate dedicated office space would be a real benefit to them. Also, I want to note that there's going to be a sound wall on the western property to basically mitigate noise from the unit. Next slide, please. This is just a section of what the new MBR process looks like. Basically, we have about 10-foot high stainless steel tanks. These tanks are filled with wastewater that's basically fully aerated, so there's minimal odor that's coming from the unit. We have designed around a certain type of system, a certain model of a package MBR system, but we are competitively bidding out this unit so we can basically have different vendors compete with each other based on cost and performance to see what we get. And also we'll have a redundant train. So basically the city will be able to, we'll have 2 trains of these membrane bioreactor processes, but they will only have to require to operate one during typical dry weather flows. Next slide, please. So this is going to be the new process flow diagram for the plant. There's really 2 big things that I want to highlight here is that there'll basically be a new sludge dewatering system. So biosolids that are generated by the new MBR plant will be essentially thickened and dewatered and be hauled off to a landfill. Currently, there's no dewatering process at the plant. And also we'll be able to utilize pond 5 for effluent storage and we will basically have the ability to implement a new recycle water project in the future. Next slide. The CEQA NEPA document was developed by AES based on this project. There was a 30-day public review period during November and December of this year. The city received one comment, and it was basically about noise that the proposed system would generate. There was an MMRP that was generated as well. This document is going to be used also for the NEPA environmental report, which would allow the city to obtain funding from the USDA. And approval of the CEQA document is part of the actions that the city can take tonight. At the federal level, that's where the NEPA concurrence is. Next slide. This is the project cost estimate. We're currently estimating a construction cost total of about $13 million. There are a number of other costs associated with the project, including bonds, having counsel, construction phase, engineering services during construction, and construction management. There's also some costs associated with getting a new, with updating the permit with the regional board. There's also financing costs, some special inspection. We put in a 10% contingency per USDA standards. And so we ended up with a total project cost estimate of about $15.8 million. When you escalate for the time it takes to implement the project, there is a slight escalation to about $16.3 million as the total engineer's estimate for the total project cost. I do want to mention that I think I came and talked to you guys, I think it was February of 2020 or late in 2019, with an estimated cost of about $12.4 million for this project. There's been a few changes in the project since then. We added a standby generator, the trailer, we added a core screen in order to basically improve the quality of these ponds. We made a couple of refinements to the MBR scope, and of course, there's the time lag between then and now. And so that's part of the reason why the costs are a little bit higher now than they were when we last talked to you. Next slide. And so some of the next steps that we're initiating at the last council meeting, the city approved the recycled water distribution system design. We received notice from the USDA that they are generally in concurrence with the supplemental project report. And so we're hoping to receive funding from the USDA next month. We've received the administrative draft permit from the regional board as well, and it's anticipated that that permit will be circulated for comment shortly. Another action that the city can choose to take tonight is to allow for the advertisement of the contract documents for this wastewater treatment plant project. Assuming that approval is granted, we'd like to try to advertise the project during March and April, and then come back for award of a construction contract in May. Construction of the project could take between 12 and 16 months. And so that's what that time frame is set there for. During that time, we'll be designing a recycled water project for the city, and the city could choose whether or not to implement that project. But after the wastewater treatment plant is constructed and we demonstrate full compliance with the terms of the regional board permit, we expect that the regional board will revoke your cease and desist order. And I try to be as brief and succinct as I can, but if you have any questions about the wastewater project or anything I've talked about, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. This is just really tremendous. I'm very, very pleased with the staff, with the consultants. This is a legacy project that seeing it come into this phase is just tremendous. It's an expensive project, but a necessary move for the city. So we will work on those aspects of it. But I just want to say thank you for the work and focus on the consultant side, the staff side, and the council side for keeping this moving forward. Any council comments or questions before I open it to the public? Okay, I'm seeing none. I'll go to public comment, open the public comment. Our city clerk.
I'm seeing no hands raised.
Okay, very good. I'll bring it back to the council. Because we're short of time, we won't get obviously too deep into anything, but I just want to express the gratitude of the community for this work that has been so necessary. So with that, if there's no council comment or question, I'll look at the recommended action and look for a motion on the recommended action. And there are two.
Well,
I have a couple questions, but go
Yeah.
ahead, Councilman Hardy, sorry.
I was ready to make the motion, so I'll defer to you, Councilman or Vice Mayor Doran.
Thank you. With respect to the sludge disposal, that's going to be the dewatered sludge, is that going to be more expensive now? You know, basically dumping it as opposed to what we are doing now going forward, or the same?
Right now, there's not a intentional sludge management system at the plant. Sludge is sort of accumulating in the ponds and evaporating. So there will be a different type of sludge management system, and there'll be some additional costs for off-hauling of sludge going forward.
I noticed in some of the documentation that at one point in the conceptual design report that there was a phase one and then future upgrades. Have the future upgrades been incorporated into just one phase now? Is that why? Are there more things that are included in this that weren't included in the concept?
We actually just took the phase one off of the title just for clarity's sake. But we laid out the plant. We tried to locate the MBR facility to allow for a third train to be constructed in the future should wastewater flows increase. So the city will have the ability to expand plant capacity should it choose to do so or need to do so going forward.
Okay. I noticed there's apparently there's going to be an increase in electrical use and then the need for a 480 volt transformer. Is that at all offset by the reduction in the sort of the activated or aerated ponds? I assume that that's a mechanical process that requires electricity. That apparently is going to be eliminated, correct? Well,
Yep.
Are they
right now
close to being equivalent?
There will be a little bit more electricity that's used with the new process than the previous process. The ponds are more of a gravity-based system, and so you don't need as much pumping or air addition with the with your existing pond process than you do with an MBR system. An MBR system has circulation of wastewater within the process. It has air that's introduced into the process, and there'll be a little bit more power that we're going to need to use with the new plant than the existing plant. We also have to use the inflow pump station.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We also are required to use.
Go ahead.
I apologize. We're also required to use a lot of the existing power requirements for influent pumping and for effluent pumping as well. So there's just a little bit more electricity that's required for this type of process.
Can you describe what the current market is in terms of interest rates? Are we at 2.5% or is that actually a little lower now for the USDA loan?
USDA loans, I checked just before this meeting, and I think it's 2.125% is the market rate.
Right.
And I believe it's 1.25% if you're poverty levels or 1.75% for intermediate.
Was there any other consideration besides using asphalt? Seems like a lot of asphalt, 63,000 square feet, as opposed to other materials.
We could choose to have different types of paving materials or to not pave the site. It could be something that we VE out, value engineer out during negotiations with a contractor or via addenda. It's our call as to what we'd like to do.
Yeah. So, you know, from 12.5 million to 16.2 million, I would not consider that a small sum increase. And I'm trying to figure out ways. I'm asking these questions to try to figure out where we can reduce the scope, but also meet the expectations or basically of the cease and desist order.
Sure. The 12.4 was
okay.
a construction cost estimate, just for clarity's sake.
Okay, that makes sense.
It
Thank
wasn't
you.
a total project cost estimate.
Got it. Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Hall, did you have a question or a comment?
No, I was just trying to clarify if there had been an energy calculation done, how much more energy will it consume?
We have an energy calculation and I could get that information to you. I don't have it at the tip of my fingers.
Oh, okay, no worries.
So if we circle back, and I do also want to give a special thank you, gratitude to Ms. Smithies for the focus on pushing this forward, and the public works staff. I just want to make sure that you feel that gratitude from the community. So with that, if there are no other comments or questions, Mr. Hall?
Sorry. While we still have Ms. Smithies, so are we still going to be able to do the redwood forest?
Yes, that's, you know, we're hopefully going to be using the recycled water more than we are spraying in the fields, but you know, we're not completely built yet, but that's the goal. If we get the pipelines in the ground, then we can offset the use of spray fields versus moving this water to other resources in the city and offset our potable water use.
Okay, great. So, and you don't foresee any additional future expansion in the next 30 years that might impede that forest with this current design?
The idea of the package plant is that we could add more trains, right? I'm probably simplifying it, but Curtis could probably explain it. But you're able to add on to the system, and there's also the opportunity to maybe groundwater recharge if we were to expand our needs for the wastewater plant to groundwater recharge. That's one of the items coming out of the drought contingency plan if cities would like to recharge with the recycled water.
Okay, great.
And perhaps we can, because I know the Redwood Forest has also looking at a timeline of looking hopefully for this year, perhaps after this meeting, we can circle back in on the Redwood Forest and see how that might link in here. But I think that's, pleased you bring that up too, because that is a consideration. So with that, we have the recommendation.
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Just one question on the timeline for construction with respect to the CDO timeline. When are we required to get it built? And it looks like it's been moved back a little bit by almost a year, I think, right? Wasn't it originally starting to be or completed in summer of 2022? And
there was
October,
we going to need an extension?
October of 22 was. We probably will likely need a formal extension. After the 2017 fires, the Water Board submitted an extension letter that following January, giving us a final completion compliance requirement of early 2023. They have verbally spoken with us about once they see progress. Now, it's a 12 to 16 month timeline to construct. So if we can get this out to bid and then constructed starting in the summer, 12 months is 2022. You're right on time with your timeline, right? So it is possible we could meet the original CDO or get close to the modified CDO, but if we're showing significant progress, similar to our Upper York Creek project, the Water Board will work with us.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, very good. If anybody else, I'll circle back and put it out there for motion on the recommended actions. And I think Mr. Hardy had sort of moved forward in that direction.
Yes, let me just get up the recommendation on my screen here. And just want to say this is really a momentous occasion. This is a big and very important project, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity to move in one motion that we adopt a resolution adopting the CEQA Mitigated Negative Declaration and Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program for the Wastewater Treatment and Reclamation Plant Phase 1 Upgrades, CIP project number S52, and the resolution approving the plans and specifications for the Wastewater Treatment and Reclamation Plant Phase 1 Upgrades, CIP project number S52 and authorizing advertisement for bids.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Councilor Hardy,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Chateau,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes, assuming we can pay for it.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Very good. Thank you.
Erica, you're going to miss all the fun. Oh,
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Lamb, and for the presentation. And thank you again, Erica. So with that, we have 1 minute left. We have one item left. Would there be a motion to extend for another 15 minutes to finish up this final item?
So moved.
Second.
Just a second. Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilor Chateau,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Hall,
yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. So this is our, we'll move on to our final item. This is item 11.2. This is an urgency ordinance to exempt fire rebuilds from design review. And this is Ms. DeRosa, our Planning and Building Director.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll try and be brief. It's my pleasure to bring this item to the Council. We are striving to meet the needs of our residents, particularly those property owners who lost their single-family homes during the recent glass fire event. Just as really brief background is in the staff report, the city's been working with one of our property owners on plans to rebuild their home on their site. It initiated a full review of the zoning code for an exemption, which would allow the property owner to rebuild without the cost and the delay from having to file a formal design review for approval by the Planning Commission. The timeframe to have design review application on most Planning Commission agendas can vary, but it's usually not less than 3 months. It was determined that the current zoning code in section 17164, it does not provide an exemption from design review to rebuild a single family home when there's been a natural disaster. So after discussion with the city attorney about how the city could legally provide accommodation for ministerial review to streamline the rebuild process, it was determined that an urgency ordinance be drafted for consideration by the council. The proposed ordinance in the packet, basically it will only facilitate a streamlined approval of development that is similar in location, purpose, use, and capacity as what was already reviewed, approved, and constructed previously. The ordinance has a 2-year sunset clause or until both the governor and the city of St. Helena terminate the state of emergency in response to COVID-19 outbreak, whichever occurs first. The city is confident that prior to that time, the new zoning code will be adopted and will include a provision to exempt from design review buildings lost to natural disasters. As noted in the urgency ordinance, properties with new construction requesting this exemption will still need to comply with the development standards in the zoning code. Upon adoption of this ordinance, the owner, is everything okay?
I think so. Yes, please continue.
Okay. Upon the adoption of this ordinance, owners desiring to rebuild will only need to receive building permit approval before beginning construction. County debris removal requirements must be met prior to the permit issuance. So the recommended action, because this is an urgency ordinance, it needs to be adopted by a 4/5 vote. And that's my summary of the report, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Are there any initial council comments or questions? Seeing none, I'm going to open it to the public and check with our city clerk to see if there's any public comment.
I see no hands raised.
Okay, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the council. This is certainly something I would be in favor of. Are there any council questions or comments at this point, or I would entertain a motion, and it looks like we need to, this needs to be a 4/5 vote.
I move approval of the recommended action to adopt the urgency ordinance.
Second.
Just one question before we take a vote.
Yes, Mr. Doring.
How does this affect someone who's lost a home in a fire but wants to build an ADU? No ADU, separate application, separate situation? No, still,
Yeah, with the new state law provisions, the ADUs go ministerially anyway without any
right.
design review.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we have a motion and a second.
I just had a question for the city attorney. Does this also need to be a motion to be adopted by title only?
No, it's for the urgency ordinance, since it doesn't go through the 2 steps, it just needs a motion for adoption is fine.
Perfect.
Councilmember Chateau's motion was appropriate.
Perfect. Okay, Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Very good. So that is our final item. Want to say thank you to everybody for the focus and the work. And as we said, we're still in the COVID situation, so let's all stay focused and help each other through that. And as a community, we will get to the other side. So unless there are other comments before we go, I will adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Priya, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.